need to sit down. I'd like to open the meeting, regular board meeting of CCWD on Wednesday, June 14th, 1 p.m. Would you all please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to the agenda here, we have roll call, please.
Okay, Director Underhill, Director Davidson,
Here.
Director Cicada, here, Director Thomas.
Yes, I'm here. All right, and at this time, we'd like to have any member of the public who wishes to address the board on any non-agendized item. If you're encouraged to talk to staff about that. Anyway, everybody's heard that, so let's move on. The consent agenda, item 3, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items on the consent agenda.
Acceptance of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, moved in second on the consent agenda. Would you please poll the board?
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes. Okay, moving on, item number 4, public hearing. These are the annual standby assessment fees. These are the fees that property owners pay, even though they perhaps aren't using the facilities. They just would like to be assured that they would be available if they need them. And Jeffrey Meyer, do you have some comments about this?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Director Thomas and members of the board. As you mentioned, these are annual standby fees. They are adopted separately, and they are for the Indian Rock Vineyard subdivision, the West Point Improvement District 3, the Ebbett Pass Improvement District 5, the Jenny Lynn Improvement District 6, Copper Cove Improvement District 7, Saddle Creek Subdivision, and the Copper Cove Lock and 10 Improvement District 8S. These standby assessments were reviewed and approved by the Finance Committee on May 30th and approved to go forward to the full board of directors. And at this point, I'll answer any questions.
Do we have to open the public hearing, or do we need a motion before the public hearing?
I don't think we need a motion before the public hearing. We just need to open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd
Thank you, Matt.
like to open the public hearing on this.
What did he said yes, we need a motion before the public hearing?
No, sorry. Yes, you need to open this is Matt.
Okay.
You need to open the public hearing.
Okay, if you were listening, I just did that.
Okay. If you'd done it before, I wouldn't have interrupted you. I move for acceptance of a slate of the annual standby assessment fees.
Second. Okay, do we need comments though?
Can I open it up to the public?
Yeah. This is a public hearing, so if any members of the public would like to comment about this or ask questions, please do so. Anybody online raising their hand? No? No? Yes.
I have a question. You know, we've been approving this standby fee for years and it's always remained at $10. Do we ever anticipate that going up, or?
It would be a difficult process
Oh,
to
okay.
increase that, and we haven't revisited that in a long time. As you said, decades. It's been on the books at the same level.
But it's $10 per acre per year.
I don't know if that's.
I think it's $10 per parcel.
Per parcel? Well. Okay, but it like in the Copper Cove La Contensa or Saddle Creek Subdivision Improvement District. Was that one large parcel or?
No, each individual parcel within that.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, not necessarily per acre, but per parcel. Okay.
So that comes to a healthy amount of money.
It's in the budget.
Not a huge amount of money
Oh.
in any of the service districts. I think it's
20,000 a year or something like that. I recall reading that amount, but I didn't memorize it. It's in the revenue. in the,
Director
Yeah, it's
Thomas?
not a,
yes,
oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, it's approximately $131,000 per year in totality. And each of those dollars have to go into the respective funds, whether it be water or sewer, based on the improvement district.
okay,
I don't think it needs to be revisited. I think it's fine for it's just a standby.
Yeah. okay. All right, we have a motion and we had some discussion. We have a second. on that?
Bertha
Oh,
second.
Bertha seconded. All right, and I understand that we can approve these collectively instead of individually, so.
My motion was to approve the
The slate, okay. All right, would you please poll the board on this?
Close the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, we had to close it. You want to close it?
Close the public hearing.
All right, the public hearing on this item is closed, so can we have the vote?
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes. All right. Under new business, this is a kind of an interesting one. 5A, discussion and action regarding the slurry line water service customer template agreement. Brad Arnold has some discussion.
Yeah, good afternoon, directors. So this item that we're presenting in here is really an update to the template form that we had put together and brought to you all last year that you approved the GM to execute with potential slurry line customers. The reason we're bringing forth an updated template version is because we've learned a lot more as we worked with the customer that we do have on the line in terms of operational specs, things like turnout size, meter sizing, stuff like that, pressure issues that we have on the line. So we wanted to incorporate some of those updates into here to specify how exactly we would bring on new customers in terms of what they're expected to install. This would still remain subject to the UWPA, the Utica wheeling agreement that we have. So those clauses are, retained in this version. We also wanted to recognize that a number of customers that we have been progressing with and trying to form agreements with are interested in cannabis cultivation, which carries its own additional agreements and reporting requirements and things we need to do and be respectful of. So you'll notice in there where there's a whole new paragraph dealing with cannabis cultivation and how we work with the Division of Cannabis Control at the county level and make sure that they have the appropriate permits and whatnot. And then, of course, we run into some unique conditions where several users are interested in forming agreements with properties along the slurry line alignment, but instead using the water at properties downstream. So we have a couple of those unique conditions where, of course, consistent with how we have other customers within the district service areas, we need to form the agreements with the property holders on the slurry line alignment. But there's nothing within this, so long as the water is being used within our water rights place of use. There's nothing that prohibits us from allowing them to serve downstream users, as long as they pay us the amounts that we have contemplated in there. So again, having learned all of this, we just updated the template form, brought that all of you to revise, and it would still give the GM authority to execute these with potential customers going forward.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So on the users that are using water for cannabis, they're required by law to report information to us. We in turn are required to report to the state. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's
So-
two folders on the water quality and water rights side.
Okay.
As soon as we indicate that part of our water rights are being used for cannabis cultivation, that opens up a whole new batch of reporting.
So in there, you said if, people don't pay kind of a thing, you could turn it off. What if the people don't give you the information that you need to require? Then who's responsible to get it? Us to the state, or you just tell the state, well, they won't give it to us? What happened?
Yeah, so in there, we contemplate that if they won't give us the information, that would, in a sense, mean that they aren't adhering to their permit conditions, which would be a county decision as to whether or not they want to revoke their permit or put any sort of suspensions on that. All we are bound by is they have to have an active permit. So if the county decides you're not giving your water district enough information, we work with DCC at the county. They can suspend their permit. We can then refer to this contract to say, we're turning you off because you don't have an active permit.
So we won't be on the hook for anything with the state because the customer didn't do what they were supposed to for us.
We won't. We expect to get all of our information. Now, that being said, we are working separately on trying to put together a cannabis cultivators policy because there's sort of other concerns we have with cannabis cultivators in the county. And I think that'll address more of your concerns and some of those.
Very cool.
Two questions. As the policy, other agencies have already established a policy, so we're going to just kind of
in terms of cannabis cultivation? It's a great question. Actually, this is kind of a new frontier for a lot of folks. We know what the requirements are coming from the state in terms of water quality and water rights, but how we incorporate that into a board adopted policy, for instance, as a water supplier, is pretty unique. So we are consulting with other Mountain Counties agencies
Right.
to understand what they're doing. I wish we had a template that we could just point to that others have done, but unfortunately we don't. Now, in that gives us some opportunities to be creative in how we want to approach that unique to Calaveras County here. So we'll look forward to bringing that to you.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, so we have reached out to other agencies on that front just to see, and so far there, I don't know, we'll keep doing that and see if we can find anyone that's adopted one, but we're not aware of anyone that has. But I also want to bring us back to the agendized item here, which is the slurry line contract, because we'll bring, what Brad's talking about is a separate policy that would be an ordinance the board would have to adopt, and we'll bring that back in a future meeting.
So we've had discussion about cannabis and, you know, cannabis is mentioned here and there, but this is the first time. Really? Or is it? Or,
Not necessarily, because we adopted the
We've had it
template for the slurry line agreement.
well, no,
last
but
year,
the
over here.
slurry, yes, but I'm talking in terms of cannabis, addressing cannabis.
No, that's really when this came to a head for us, because
Mm-hmm.
the first time we had to wrestle with it was in that slurry line agreement and the water rights reporting requirements and all that go along with it. And then I think from there, we're thinking about where else we might need that policy in place.
The template that's in our board pack with all the redlining and stuff,
Right.
that's what we're approving, those changes, right?
Correct. That's
Okay.
not the policy.
Done.
That's just the slurry line template. update. Yes.
Okay,
And there,
Uh,
sorry, go
I had one more question, and I would like just a ballpark figure of how many customers are we talking about?
We know of at least one that's reached out to us that would sign this template, assuming you approve the revisions pretty much right away as soon as we send it to them. We are in discussions with another interested party at that point, so that could potentially bring us up to 3 users on the slurry line. I would say that the third is maybe early stages. The second one would be as soon as you adopt, we'll probably sign with
right.
the general.
And this is again, an updated template, and I think the changes they're not huge changes, not a completely different direction that we're going in. And
Right.
we had an internal debate about, does this even need to go back to the board or these non-substantive changes? There was enough red line, I think just the color. and the
Oh,
ink,
yeah.
I thought, let's make sure we're good with the board before we move forward with it. But I don't think it's a big departure from what we were doing before.
I'm good with it.
since Mr. Oliver over at the county chief building official is now responsible for cannabis issues for the county, has he weighed in on this document at all?
Not on the slurry line document. We will certainly get the county involved when we work on this separate effort that we're talking about. We want to be in lockstep with them. When Lisa Medina was heading up that temporarily, we were working with her back and forth on DCC issues and matters. So we'll look to get this new representative involved on those discussions.
Mm.
But in terms of the slurry line agreement itself that we've presented here, again, we're just basically kicking the responsibility to the county and state and say, as long as you've got your permits, as long as you're approved, we can serve to you, recognizing that we're going to have additional reporting requirements that you're going to have to pay for. It's really where it amounts to.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
On page 1, at the bottom, quantity and place of use says water may be used in the subject land for crop and or landscape irrigation and cultivation purposes. Is dust control, is that something that we would prohibit, or is it just assumed that
That's a good
a
question.
day-to-day farming operation would have that?
Good question.
Yeah, I think we would assume that day-to-day operations would have some dust mitigation that's typical of irrigation practices. If it's, for instance, done like Sierra Pacific does up the hill, like for dust mitigation there, that one we might have to contemplate what that means for the beneficial use under our water rights.
Right, and I would add, if it were on site, I don't think we'd have an issue with it for purposes of that operation. There is a no resale provision, and so if it became, trucks.
So I'm just talking about, if they're, farming
Yeah,
creates dust.
I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, I think that would be contemplated as incidental to
Dust control
irrigation.
Pretty important to them.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? I have a couple of comments on this, and it kind of goes back to the, my first involvement with Calaveras County, and as a young man, I used to drive a company, our
Company stagecoach.
company stage. His, let me write that one down. Well, it was kind of like a stagecoach. It was an international 2-ton truck, and I would drive it up here to the cement plant, and I would load up 6 pallets of cement and take it back. And I certainly had no premonition about ever landing here and being involved in what we're doing here. But I have literally cut thousands of cement sacks in half, right through that typical logo, big big sequoia, right? That's the redwoods, like the big trees. So I think that this is a historical moment that we should kind of memorialize a little bit here. I would suggest that we consider going back to the top of this page here. We have agreement for water supply from, we had the Cataract Cement slurry line. I want to change it, or proposing to change it, from Calaveras County Water District's possessive, apostrophe S, the Grant Metzger slurry line.
Grant Metzger slurry.
And the reason for that is that Grant Metzger was a kind of his larger than life guy that I first met 30 years ago when I came to this county. 6'4", had managed the cement company for 23, 25 years. Was under his direction. He's general manager of the cement plant when this thing was put in operation, and he's a brilliant mining engineer, and I'd like to see his name put on it.
Okay, I mean, I certainly can't think of a reason, but I'll look to Michael and others. But can I first just ask, is there any relation to another Metzger I see here?
That's his grandson.
Oh, really?
And
It's interesting. Interesting history on
Oh,
that.
that would
for
be,
sure.
that's a special distinction. Yes.
well, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if that's agendized.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily amend this contract for that purpose. I think we could take that up absolutely if we want to. I think it would be good to celebrate
This, why
use
don't you make
of
it?
the slurry line in general. That's something that we've talked about doing some more outreach around, because it is a historic use of what is, I think, a really, really cool piece of infrastructure. And we've done some press releases on it, but I think we could do some more on that front. And I think that would probably be the right opportunity to address something like that.
But aren't we approving this template as presented and we're asking for a recommendation to change it? Why?
Yeah, but I don't think that would be the place to change the name of the piece of infrastructure. I think we can.
We're changing it right now. You're proposing to changing it from the Cataract Cement slurry line, and I would like to call it the district's Grant Metzger slurry line. So
I like that idea.
Oh,
Why not? I mean,
Listen, I don't support it at this time. I mean, this is a contract that we've got somebody willing to sign and ready to go. If we somehow violate the Brown Act by not properly agendizing this item, and then it becomes maybe Matt can weigh in on that, but I have no problem taking a look at changing the name of anything we have, but I just don't know that we've.
yeah.
I mean, we have a legal document in front of us that somebody wants to sign. And if somebody objects to this because it wasn't agendized as such, or even mentioned in the agenda,
Yeah. Let me add something.
I mean, Matt's on the
Yeah.
line, so.
Uh-huh. Let me
What do
add
you
something,
think, Matt?
because we should
Yeah.
ask before we start our meetings, are there any changes? So that if there are, or any additions, then you could have said something.
well, but if you think about what you just said, that doesn't make sense, because we always have things presented to us and we make little changes and then it's approved as amended. So why couldn't we do that? That's all I'm saying.
weigh in on this.
So So I'm trying to, I mean, I'm following along, I guess. I mean, the item on the agenda is, and I'm looking at it, discussion action regarding slurry line water service customer template. And it's my understanding that Director Thomas wants to discuss what we're actually going to call the slurry line and potentially give it a name, I guess. Is that?
That's correct.
It's not necessarily an agenda item. The agreement, what we're looking at is the agreement. I mean, I guess if you want to words, I mean, the most you could do is wordsmith what you're going to call it in the agreement, I guess. But there's nothing on the agenda as to how we're going to, if we want to name a piece of infrastructure, I guess is my point. So I don't think you could take that action. I think you can
Which I think
just
would be
edit the agreement.
I support the idea, and I think that would be a better way to do it and draw more attention to it rather than just changing it doesn't effectively change the name of the piece of infrastructure.
Well, it just changes the name of it. That's on the top of the contract. It doesn't change the name of the infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
What do we do about paragraph E? We have 2 paragraph E's. We haven't discussed which one we're going to include.
Well, if I recall correctly on there, we included both paragraphs E's in there because one will apply if it's being used on the property itself, aligning the slurry line, or if it's being served downstream. So that's an either or type scenario. I think we might have even specified one or the other in the template agreement there. So at the time when we go to sign, we would basically pull out the one that doesn't apply.
Okay, well, as chair, I would entertain a motion to table this till the next meeting where it could be brought back for consideration of this wording or the proposed wording. And I'll take my chance.
I make a motion, we approve this agreement as it stands. And
Could we,
revisit the facility at another time.
Russ, what if we were to approve it as is, so we can get the one contract signed and ask them to bring it back next time with whatever we need to do?
Wait, so, and sorry, just to understand, Director Thomas, is the question whether we should just use one or the other of those 2 paragraphs? And
No, I'm just using that as an example that we have to decide which one of those paragraphs that we want to use, E or E.
Not here today, we don't. That option is preserved for when we go to execute the contract.
I see.
Right, so the request is to approve the template as it is here, and then we can work on that with the landowner or the individual customer at that.
So can we approve this today? We'll get that one signed and ask them to bring it back next month, and with the name change, however we have to do that. That way it won't hold up that customer that wants to get in. It kind of helps Jeff, but yet we'll make sure it comes back to the next meeting.
I
We
don't
have
know.
to change the name of a facility too. I mean, the questions I'm gonna ask is, you know, what's it gonna cost? What is it entailed? We have to change title. I mean, do we have to, what all do we have to do to make that happen?
I think there's a way to do it that is, and this is not to diminish it at all, but for lack of a better term, more symbolic than legal necessarily. So it's not, and this is what we've done with the Bummerville Reservoir, right?
Right.
We don't refer to it as the regulating reservoir anymore, but we didn't go through all of the, we didn't go and rename it in the easements, for example, or all of the regulatory documents that we might have that reference that piece of infrastructure. But for all intents and purposes, as far as the public's concerned and our public comments on it are concerned, it's the Bummerville Reservoir. And so I think we could do something like that and do make more of an effort to memorialize that and celebrate it in a separate event than the.
What is it in the easements right now? How is it written in the easements then?
It's the cataract mine cement slurry line in most of the easements. And I was just going to add, and I don't know if this is helpful, so if it's not, please stop me, but there's a reason we haven't done any ribbon cuttings or any ceremony yet for using water on the slurry line. And that's in part because we knew there were going to be challenges with operations. There's a learning curve. We're serving water in a place that's using infrastructure that's never had it before. So we knew things that are now addressed in this updated template were going to need to be revised. And as we continue to bring on customers, then it would become more of a successful story that we could then advertise of the great work we're doing. So we fully intend to have that, prideful ceremony where we go out there and show off, bring water through a slurry line. It's just we wanted to get through the hiccups first before we point to something that maybe wasn't working.
And really, Since this is an agreement, it's really just between CCWD, when we always call it slurry line, we don't use all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But, a
Right,
more
and this just,
would be appropriate.
and this, you know, like I said, and I think Brad raises a good point. We did want to time the ribbon cutting with, you know, successful application of the water. And we took a page out of MSD's book on that front in terms of timing the ribbon cutting. And so we have, you know, thought about that. And I think like I said, I think we can do a good job of celebrating that and naming it and however we want to handle that at the appropriate time. This will be in a folder in a file cabinet somewhere. So whether it has.
And it's really only gonna be seen
So,
by the
yeah.
customer.
So that, you know, to listen to Director Thomas, you know, we approve this and then we bring it back and we'll get the, you know, the notoriety, not notoriety, but the attention. Yeah, the attention that it would.
Right.
Yeah, and then we can point to the fact that we've been successfully serving water on
Right,
the slurry
right.
line for
Uh-huh.
a number of.
So we have a first, I'm gonna go ahead and make the second to approve it as presented today.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Sorry.
You want to, Rebecca, could you poll on the vote?
Public comment.
Oh, there's
There's
public comment?
There's been enough public comments, mostly from me. Anyway, anybody in the public wishing to comment on this item? Okay, then please poll the board.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
Director Cicada.
Yes,
Director Thomas.
Yes, through clenched teeth.
but you know, could you make sure that at some point in the near future, before the end of summer, that we could either do the ribbon cutting or something to, you know, memorialize, Mr. Metzger?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The next time that Russ is sitting in for the president, we'll do something.
Well, as
That'll-
I'm looking
that'll
at
be-
this
that'll
doesn't
be 2
have
weeks
to
from
be
now.
there. It's really CCWD and the customer, that's it, whatever it's called, but it would be nice to do something like in the ribbon cutting and explain the history behind it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly we would like to respect that
Maybe
history
you
too.
should have some, you know, local product tasting and the whole thing for.
I'll decline to answer that one. Perfect. Well, thank you, board members.
It's eventually,
won't be allowed
it'll
to go.
eventually get down to the water,
All right.
get down to Ironstone anyway. All right, moving on, we have 5B, discussion and action to approve the purchase of a paving machine.
Cindy, you want to take this one?
Yes, I'm okay with it, however. No, because I was like, going, what, you know, another $130,000 something.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it makes sense with how you presented it, but a couple of my questions are, do the people operating this machine have to be certified? How do our construction people know how to do the road that we're talking about? It's a long driveway. Do they have to be certified? What kind of training are they gonna need? And then, because this is a big deal to do this, when we're doing the smaller fixes, I think it makes sense. It pencils financially. But are we gonna have you come back next year and say, well, we gotta have another full-time equivalent and you've gotta be certified like a heavy equipment operator?
Yeah.
That's the ball that I'm waiting to hear if it's gonna direct.
First of all,
Cindy, it's not gonna happen.
first of all, I just want to say great job on your presentation.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
you want to go ahead and answer the question.
Yes, absolutely. So, thank you for the questions, Director Cicada. So, in terms of certification, no. Do we have staff that are currently trained on how to operate a paver? Yes. The quote for the paver and, excuse me, you guys have copies for the quote? Okay, so, I believe it's page 8 includes, the breakdown of what the costs will be. So the paver itself is 54,900 and so what we are requesting through the purchase is also some training.
Okay.
So we would have the 4 staff that currently are in-house understand how to pave. Then we would include the construction and the utility crews in the training effort as well. So that would happen in earnest.
But what about like, you know, preparing the road itself to accept the pavement, the asphalt?
Great
What-
questions.
Compacting and.
Yep. Yeah, so just to kind of put it in the context of the project. So our construction crew completed the grit chamber installation and the new trash rack installation at the Vallecito Waste Plant in-house internally. And they improved the base rock road access and site for paving. So they're knowledgeable on how to prep, and as is our utility crew, because they actually we pave internally now. We just don't have the equipment. to do
Right,
so.
but you're
Yeah.
also doing smaller pieces, which.
You're true. Good point. And so, short answer is yes, we do understand how to improve the sub base in order to prep for paving. The access road from the highway to the Vallecito facility, yeah, that'll be tough. I mean, it'll be a tough job to do. This paver is smaller. It's not a huge paver, but it can do the job. And really, one of the more important considerations, and as the operations team sat down with Michael and we reviewed those initial paving quotes, we said, hey, we've got the job done, great. Timing isn't perfect, but in consideration of all the weather that we had, our construction window has been pretty tight for this project. So hats off to the construction crew to get us here, to get us to the point where we could actually analyze the paving quotes. And Michael had the foresight to say, hey, didn't you request a capital outlay item working through the budget process for a paver? And we said, well, yeah, we did actually. And so wouldn't it provide more longevity to the district to just purchase the paver rather than approve one of these quotes to get all this work done?
So, and one other, so.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
that these employees, are they on board with, yeah, we'll go ahead and do paving as well? And if so, what does the union have to say? Because they're taking on another task.
I can tell you that it's a mixed bag. You have some folks that are enthusiastic to be able to complete paving work in-house. You have some folks that are a little concerned about the ability to do so and about spreading departments over across disciplines. But I think that's the success for all of our ops crews has a lot to do with my, Pat, and Jesse's job and our ability to manage the priorities and work with the supervisors to understand where the pinch points are and to provide them with solutions to get things done. Does this mean we'll eliminate the asphalt paving and the GL? No, but does it provide us the flexibility to do work internally to save more money long-term? Yes, absolutely it does.
Just because the size of the Vallecito driveway, it's pretty long.
That's right.
What's the distance of?
Oh, that's a great
It's
question.
in the-
Yes,
it's in the
let me,
report.
It doesn't really matter in paving. It's the things.
Okay.
yeah, and
So my question was, or my comment was, what happens if it isn't graded just actually perfect enough where all of a sudden the middle gets a nice crack in it and then it rains and then, you know what I'm saying? I just want to make sure that if we do this, are they really trained enough to do it to where we don't have the problems down the road? 'Cause if somebody did it for us, I imagine we'd have a couple-year warranty on it. If we do it ourselves, there wouldn't be that warranty, which, again, penciled out looks like, great, let's do it. But can we really do it? And is the only complaint that the employees have, not that what you're saying, it's a mixed bag, some want it, some don't. Is it just because they're getting spread thin? Or is it like, do we really have to have another task?
well,
you
it's
know.
it's a concern for both. And those are
Okay.
very valid questions. And
Yeah.
Director Davidson, it's like, we can start with 12 foot so we can do a pass with this paver but in consideration of the hopper, it's almost a 5-ton hopper. So we can get a fairly good distance, a lot greater distance than I think some of the folks that think about a paver such as this would consider. But
Do you do like smaller section and then wait a few months to see how it's holding up? And if all looks good, you did good, go another section, or is that not necessary? I don't know.
so
It's not rocket science.
we have a lot of different we have a lot of options here.
Okay.
And the key thing about it is that we have those options because currently right now we have to reestablish the base rock road from Highway 4 to Vallecito treatment plant anyway.
Yeah.
And we've done that twice since I've been here and I haven't been here for 5 years. So I can only imagine how many times we've done that prior. And then really the encroachment is dangerous. So when you're in a heavy loaded truck and you're trying to get out on the Highway 4 and you're stuck, right? And so there's a lot of safety considerations.
I just want to make sure that you guys are thinking down the road for that. I think it's a great idea. Like I said, it pencils out nicely. I just hope that we've thought of everything and not, 8 months from now or next year, we're saying, Well, we got this issue, that's all you don't want me to say, I told you so.
No, I think they're, like Damon said, they're good questions,
Yeah.
totally valid questions. We've talked through a lot of it. And I think, just, and this is anecdotal, I guess you could say, but just seeing some of the work that our crews do just on the dirt roads that they grade themselves, it's super impressive. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of confidence in the crews, the folks that are stepping up and saying, yeah, we want this and we'll do it. But
Well,
it's
our
a good
crews
question, and we got to make sure we're
Excellent
prepared to
with what
use
they
it.
do. I just want to make sure they're not put in a spot where maybe they're not as good there and maybe they get disappointed or something, you don't want to put somebody in a job they can't do.
Right.
Well, those are really insightful concerns
Yeah.
because they're there. And I think what we do is we have discussions with our field staff and we make sure that we start everything successfully. So do we start on a flat spot in the yard? Probably.
Bertha, Jeff has a question.
You go ahead. It's,
Oh, I want to know about the supply of asphalt. Or do we have a good,
We do in the summertime. Yeah, we do. We have readily accessible supplies, I think for multiple sources, but yes.
so
Absolutely.
we don't have to worry about the fact that we have a machine, but we don't have the asphalt?
Well, in the wintertime, it gets kind of interesting. So generally, we're not gonna have objectives unless, we have a requirement for, we have a line break, knock on wood, something happens. And then we have to go in and pave because we're kind of in a pinch point with the county.
Yeah.
Then we might run into a situation where we can't get hot mix, but generally, for the most part, we have ready supply. Yeah.
So
So-
for the most part, by buying this machine, we're not going to hear about, we've done the paving and then here comes the county that wants to.
Thank you.
We still could. So we're still gonna experience, we're gonna have service lateral replacements that are taking place while we have projects that other departments are working on. And so maybe the paver is involved in a different project while we have the county reviewing a service line replacement project that happened a week ago. And we still could get hey, by the way, guys, when you do that compaction test, we want to be there, or we would like to see that paved ASAP. I can say there's been a marked improvement in our relationship with the county and roads and trenches.
You said it was a 12-foot, pad. Can it go down smaller?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's illustrated in here.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't read that because I didn't have that attachment.
yeah.
Oh, I know, but you can see the
Can I ask you a
demonstration.
question?
Yes, go ahead.
In regards to the typical process, I mean, this is something that we can knock off of, one big job with and pretty much pay for. But in the process of our typical patches, is this a useful tool for that?
Yeah.
And maybe you can explain to the board, this, what we typically do is go in and temporary patch until we get enough of these spot sites, and that's what we get a lot of grief with.
Right.
We get a lot of grief for these temporary patches. And so will this help along with that? Do we expect to be able to go in and knock out a few of these ourselves? Maybe not
Yes.
have to let so many build up, is that?
That's true. We're still gonna have to enlist the services of other pavers to come work out for us, just simply because we don't have enough staff. But yes, we do add up 40 patches that have to be final paved, and then we'll go knock a bunch out. This will allow us to go, hey, guys, these 5 are gonna be controversial, or they're in a heavily trafficked area. Let's just go knock them out. And what it also allows us to do is to provide the utility crew, who are also, moving along methodically, replacing service lines, to then just pave those trenches. And what happened in the wintertime is we found ourselves, and this is wintertime, so it might not be the greatest example, but sometimes we find ourselves caught between priorities and we have to trench, or we have to plate a trench and then go work on something else. And then we have to, it negatively impacts the public and it negatively impacts the county. This will provide us the opportunity to go in there and knock the paving out.
Shipping and delivery dates are approximate. So what are we talking about?
So there are 4 in the yard, in Wisconsin. He can have to us in 5 days. So, yeah, and there's a sense of urgency to that. We'll get it here, we'll get everybody trained, and we'll get moving.
Damon, if I could have you look at your handout here, go to page 3.
Page 2.
3.
Three.
that's a, kind of look at page 3 and 4 at the same time. That I was having trouble figuring out what that shiny thing was above the hopper, but that's a mini excavator, of course.
That's right.
And if you look on page 4, he's turning around and getting something off of a dump truck, looks like. But particularly on page 4, it looks like that this thing is being used to spread either gravel or concrete. That's not asphalt.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just trying to illustrate that there's a couple different applications that you can use with this hopper and you can do a base rock. But yeah, it's a skid steer or an excavator mounted attachment, if you will.
But
Because if you look at page 5, you can see it, the hopper on the skid steer there.
mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it appears he's pulling gravel out of the back of the dump truck and loading the houses.
Right,
So we have a skid
but-
steer already?
yes.
But so I'm assuming that there are augers in the bottom of the hopper that spread it out to the maximum width. But is it conceivable that this thing could be used to pour like 5-sack mix concrete?
I'm not sure.
That's what it looks like to me, but
It does look that way. It does look that way.
okay. And I heard mentioned that it could pave as wide as 12 feet. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, so if you go to the paving width from 11.8, oh, yeah, to 78, oh, my bad, yeah, so that's more like 9 feet or, yeah. Per minute.
Well, it's just either way. It's.
Yeah, it's 2 passes, yeah, yep, exactly.
Okay. It says that we have to provide a propane tank,
Yeah, I saw that.
and I'm, don't misunderstand, I'm not trying to talk against this, but I'm just curious. Do you have to hook into the hydraulics of the skid steer to activate the thing, do you know, or?
I am not sure.
I would imagine it has an independent, motor on it.
You'd think, but I don't see. Oh, it's battery operated. Battery powered, right?
Solar.
He's not even paying attention.
Yeah, the battery pack, right, remote control, right.
You could operate, you could do it like a drone. You could just operate it from here.
Yes, yeah. Don't ask me to operate it though, from here.
It does say you can lay.
How many for acceptance that we purchased? The paving machine. Using capital outlay CIP funding originally identified for the Dallas dirt removal, grit removal project.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this item? Come on up, Ralph.
Good afternoon, board. Great presentation by Damon. I have full confidence in your crews. My gosh, you do MOV replacements. You guys work on your control valves. I'm just wondering if you guys may want to lease this machine to do this project and see if it's your cup of tea. And I don't know if that was looked into. That's all I got.
Good question. I don't know.
Have you guys seen your typical paving crew on the side of the road?
No,
We
we
really
need-
think-
Monica Murphy says something.
We really think we can't handle this.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about.
Our guys are.
I'm not talking about the one on 94, that got all that stuff.
I think we're
We
willing
didn't
to take
originally
that.
look at a lease because the objective was initially a capital outlay request, so we were looking to secure the piece of equipment.
Can we maybe get some people out here with some 4-foot rakes and just see if they can fix a flat spot before we purchase this thing?
Yeah, we have a lot of talented folks here at CCWD that are very handy with a 4-foot rake.
Okay.
Well, but dredging up on, from decades ago, I did consider buying a oh, it's one of those, big old backhoes and so I decided to lease it with a purchase option. And I didn't like the machine, so I just said, no.
Yeah, and I think that was more to Ralph's point is what,
Yeah.
whether we'd be happy with the piece of equipment or not. I know our crews, our staff have done a lot of research on this, so, but I think in general, that's a good suggestion where that option is available. If we can demo it first. It's a fairly specific tool, so I don't know if we
Yeah.
had that option here, but.
Yeah, and it hasn't been discussed with the sales rep. So I'm not sure.
Okay, just one comment on this. I mentioned this to Damon, but I looked at the paving operation that took place 6 months ago or so on O'Byrne's Ferry Road, where the crew there had a very narrow paving machine, and I just thought I've never seen anything like that before. It was really very cool because they had about a 36-inch wide area to pave, and they just went through it. I mean, they did a mile a day or more. So anyway, we've got a motion and a second. We've got public comment. Would you please poll the board?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the support. Good job, Danny.
Okay. Well,
Now the fun stuff.
now the fun starts. I would suggest that before we launch into this, can we take a 5-minute little respite for, how about it's coming back in 5 minutes? That's
All
fine.
right, might as well use.
And we're going to start in the discussion regarding fiscal year 23-24 preliminary operating and capital improvements budget. And we have Jeff Meyer again.
Good afternoon, members of the board, members of the public. As Director Thomas mentioned, we have the preliminary fiscal year 2023-24 operating and CIP budgets. Next slide, please. This budget was taken to the Finance Committee on May 30th, and they recommended that it be forwarded to the full board for approval. There's several changes, some slight changes to the budget that was presented on the 30th and the one that you're seeing today. Two of the main changes are, and these I'll take responsibility for, is under Department 59 Admin Services, the projected budget for Tyler system, for full system, was I put down originally an amount that was for the full contract amount. It has been reduced to just for this fiscal year for a savings of $246,000. But we also added in the non-departmental salaries and benefits, the PERS UAL in just over $265,000 for the unfunded accrued liability for current retirees. We currently pay UAL costs for current employees and past employees. And in looking at it, I didn't think it was correct to charge all the departments for past employees UAL costs, and especially when there's only 29 current employees that are in the classic or older PERS plan. So that shows up separately in non-departmental. There are a few other minor changes, but those were the two big ones.
Jeff, can I jump in here real quick?
Yes.
And I just want to touch on the Tyler one a little bit more because we had a good discussion, and we had a good discussion in the Finance Committee on that.
I'm
and,
surprised we're jumping right into that one first.
Well, I think because a big part of it is because the dollar amount came way down from what it looked like in the Finance Committee, and this looks much more along the lines of what we expected than what we were seeing at the Finance Committee. But we also had a good discussion about kind of taking stock of where we're at and reevaluating the fit and the best path forward. And so I just wanted to, for Director Cicada and Director Ratterman, who's not here, but we had this a good discussion at Finance Committee about that. And I just wanted to assure you that is still happening. We're still having those discussions, even though the cost, the dollar amount, the annual dollar amount in the budget went way down. We're still kind of reassessing where we're at.
So I'm going to update the other board members real quick. So what happened in our finance meeting, the total of the Tyler finance contracts, annual finance maintenance agreements were roughly $333,000 annually. I didn't think that was appropriate, and I suggested they look into, should we stop Tyler and go back to Springbrook? So I think that's what you're looking at.
Or evaluate other options.
Or other options,
exactly.
Yeah. But my comment, and thank you for taking that out of the budget. But ultimately, if we stay with Tyler and have all those modules, we're looking at over $300,000 a year.
No, that's what we corrected. That's not an annual cost. And so I think, Jeff, if you want to elaborate on that.
Certainly. Director Cicada, you are correct in some of the concerns that we have as far as cost and implementation. But in looking at this, if we have all the Tyler modules in place, it'll be about $75,000 a year. Now, there are some implementation costs in this year if we implement all the other financial modules and HR modules, project modules. However, one of the other comments that was topics that was brought up during the Finance Committee was the fact that right now, because all we have is the UB, the utility billing system in place, we are still having issues with the UB system. And the question that was brought up, and Michael brought, thank you, Michael, for bringing this to their attention, is that we need to look at the Tyler UB system and figure out what is necessary, what is required to make it work. We know that there were some implementation issues, but we're going to, working with Kelly R, customer service and finance and all, we're taking a deeper dive into this and making sure that as we look at the UB and any financial systems, it meets our needs and meets our requirements. So that's an ongoing process, and we hope to be able to report back to the board sometime in July about that, because there's a lot going on with some of the other projects, and this is going to take a little bit of time. But we're also working with Tyler to go through what they see is what happened in the implementation process, what we need to fix, and if there are any things out there, once we remedy that installation, if there's still some concerns that it's not meeting our needs. So there is an ongoing review of this. It's going to be very thorough, and we will report back to the Finance Committee and the full board.
Well, let me make a couple comments. 75,000 is still an awful amount, but it's tolerable compared to 300,000. The other part in there, how much is budgeted? Because we're still using Springbrook for everything else. So how much are we paying on that? And it's, if we're having to pay an additional 200 and some odd $1,000 for implementation fees for Tyler, with all the baloney, in my opinion, it sounds like that has been happening with this, I don't think they should charge us that much. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what, you've really, for whatever happened, you know, AMI or Tyler, something didn't work right. Where that failure was it our fault? And if it wasn't, but if it isn't, you know what, if they're learning, then we shouldn't pay such a high fee to get them to learn how to make all this happen.
Yeah.
I just think Tyler should be scrapped when we go back to Springbrook. That's my comment.
That would be expensive too, is the issue. But I think the point I really wanted to make is, I think even though the costs have come back down to what we had anticipated they would be, we are still going to go through that process and answer those questions, because part of the issue is that, you know, yeah, where's the responsibility lie for the issues we've had with implementation on the utility billing side? Another part of the issue is some of those issues are caused by the fact that we haven't implemented those other modules, and that they are designed to work together. And so.
And why haven't we?
Why, how, that was my question.
Because
Why?
of the issues we've had with the utility billing and the AMI project implementation at the same time, some of those other modules and the staff turnover that we've had and other issues, some of those other modules have been on hold.
Well, so let's say, well, if we had all our modules in Tyler, everything, no more
Right.
Springbrook, what is our annual cost? He said 75,000. Is that right, Jeff? You thought the annual maintenance cost for all modules?
Yes, for the 5-year
Okay.
contract period.
Okay, so is that 75,000 over a 5-year period, or 75,000 annually for 5 years? Okay, so
Which is what we
yeah,
expected.
so you're saying it's a huge cost to go back to Springbrook. I've heard good things about Springbrook, and I wonder, since we're threatening to leave them, are they willing to work with us? Because if we could stay to go back at a $225,000 price range, we're not paying any more than what we're going to pay to go over to Tyler, which is still a
Right.
lot more than any of us knew this whole thing would take.
This
has been
is
going on
actually,
for
the
3
costs
years.
we're presenting now are what was presented to the board when we approved the Tyler contract.
What was the
What-
total cost for Tyler did we approve?
I don't recall exactly, but the contract that we're implementing now, the $75,000 per year, with all of that information was presented at the time.
I guess what I want to know is, how much should we as a board say, okay, let's go with Tyler, and it's going to be this much total dollars. What was that? And then how much have we spent?
Right, which is, we're
That's what
still working with those same contracts that were approved by the board, and the costs are in accordance with.
So,
The point I wanted to make was, even though we're back to those dollar amounts, we are still going through that process of evaluating whether it's the best fit for the district or not.
so the other thing, since we pulled these out of the budget, we're still going to have issues with Tyler, because until we move all the modules into the accounting system, we'll have issues, you said. So, how are you going to put this money back in the budget, or did you just put it over here in the accounting pot in case we decide, like, make it in a CIP situation? We'll pull from it if we use it later on in the fiscal year. Because if we take it out and then now we find that we want to add modules going forward with Tyler, where's that money coming from?
No, I think we've budgeted for implementation, right, Jeff?
Yes, we budgeted for implementation and we also budgeted for another year of Springbrook on the financial side only, project
Well-
management, and that is just under $19,000.
Okay, so the 200 and some odd thousand that you took out, what was that you took out?
That was for that's a difference between the total contract amount for all the 5-year time frame and what it is for just one single year.
What was that?
I left in all the implementation costs and all the license costs for all modules that Tyler is offering us.
Where in the budget, the detail, where is the implementation costs in the same section where the service maintenance contracts are?
No, it's under professional services. And we can get into the detail on that when we go to the admin services budget if you'd like, or we can discuss it now.
Yeah, it's okay. Move forward so they can hear everything else. I'm gonna
Well,
look at the current versus the previous. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
others may remember it differently than I do, but when this first came to my attention, we said that Springbrook was not working. We needed to find another solution. And so Tyler was presented as the other solution. And I remember like $90,000 was what it was gonna cost. And so that was 90,000 and Springbrook was gonna go away. But it's makes my head spin to know that we're 3 years into this now and we're still paying Springbrook $75,000 a year.
No, 19. Where the annual cost, the annual licensing cost for Tyler is $75,000 a year.
So Springbrook gets for their continued assistance with the one portion that they're doing was what did you say was the finance part?
Finance and project manager, accounts payable, and purchase orders, purchasing.
They're doing everything but utility bills. Springbrook is currently doing everything but utility bills, right?
Yes.
Okay, and what is Tyler doing for 775?
At this particular point in time, the only thing we have paid is for utility billings. What's in the budget now is the cost for implementing for 23-24 all the other Tyler modules along with for their maintenance costs and their licensing costs, as well as implementation costs.
Which will, then we will fully replace Springbrook, but right now, the annual cost to maintain Springbrook is 17,000.
19.
Uh,
And how much is Springbrook?
75,000 a year.
I thought-
Or sorry,
that was-
I thought you said how much, Springbrook is 19, Tyler is 75.
Springbrook is 19,000 for everything but utility billing?
No, Director Cicada,
Uh-huh.
we do not have a quote from Springbrook at this particular point in time for all their services. All we requested was a quote for maintaining everything but utility billing. And part of our analysis of the Tyler system will also be looking at if we determine that there's still issues, we will also still look at Springbrook and other alternatives and find out what their costs and benefits are.
Well, part of this situation are the automatic meters working good now? Is that all dialed in? Or now all we gotta do is the finance side?
Very close. We're past substantial completion with the contractor. There's a punch list of the final remaining things that have to be cleaned up. There are still some data issues, but Kelly Richards and the engineering team and everybody's working really hard on it right now to make sure it's totally dialed in before the contractor's off the job. So we're very close to completion on that.
And then once that's done, we should, in theory, be able to make a decision on the finance system, whichever one it is.
Right.
Correct. And
What kind of,
Just, I
excuse me,
just want to make one final comment here. It seems like to me that there's some ethics involved in this. If a company called Tyler says, okay, your licensing and your implementation fees are going to be X amount of dollars, whatever they are, and the system doesn't work, how can they be justified in charging you for a system that's supposed to work?
Well, I think that the system is working. We are using it. We have relied on it since it went live. It has not been as smooth as we had hoped, that's for sure. But part of that is decisions that CCWD made. And so that's the, part of the process that we're working through and deciding whether it's really the best tool for us or not. But, yeah, we have our frustrations with Tyler as we do with most any vendor, but it's not accurate to say it's not working.
Okay, well, I did have an extended conversation with the Mueller folks at Monterey, and they said that they would have advised us strongly not to do what we did.
Right.
At the same time that they were doing this, the implementation of the AMI system, the 13,000 meters, at the same time that you're installing a new accounting system.
So
the phrase that he used, he said, that's the kiss of death.
it's interesting that you had that conversation with them, because we had that conversation with them 2 years ago and they did not give us that advice, which is fine. We are where we are. Both the assurances that we had from both Mueller and Tyler was no problem. We've done this before, and it will work.
Something.
And it will work even if you do it at the same time. So those were the assurances we had. We have certainly learned, from this experience. And if we could go back in time and do it differently, there's definitely decisions we would make that.
Are other agencies calling to inquire about how's it going over there at CCWD?
I don't think Mueller has put us on their reference list.
Oh, okay.
You should get that voice out there.
Go ahead, brother.
My question is, we're having all of these problems. What kind of, what kind of meetings are we having with Tyler saying, what are you doing to us? Why?
Well, again, it's not all Tyler's fault here. So we are having those discussions, and Kelly Richards is really in the lead on it and holding their feet to the fire. And Jeff and I are supporting her, and we're involved, wherever we need to be to make sure that they are delivering on their end. But it's a process of figuring out what was configured properly to begin with, and some of those were CCWD decisions, not Tyler decisions. And how do we correct things that weren't configured properly, and then figuring out, from there, is this, the best tool for us.
But meanwhile, they're charging us $75,000.
Right. And we are using the tool.
Actually, may I interrupt here? And I apologize for that. Actually, they're not charging us $75,000 right now. That $75,000 includes all the financial systems, the payroll systems, the purchasing systems, all the systems. Right now, all we're paying for is the UB system.
And how much is that?
I'd have to get back into it. Hold on just a second.
I think that's the majority of it. So it's still close to it.
We're still shy of about $40,000 a year, 40,000. So we're paying about maybe $37.50 a year for the UB side.
Okay.
The rest of
Thank
the
you.
budget is for, like I said, core financials, fixed assets, personnel management, and purchasing.
And it's not, so, it's not,
And that's not.
from as much as I would love to sit here and say it's all the contractor's fault, it's really not. And we have talked to other agencies that love the exact same product that we're using for Tyler. It has worked well for them. And so that's part of the process we're going through, is what can we do to make it successful? And if we can't make it successful, then we're going to look at alternatives.
The other challenge, in my opinion, is starting with the UV billing. It shouldn't have. You should start with the infrastructure, which is your general ledger, and then you build your components off to that, because the general ledger is what pulls it all together to produce everything in reports wise. So that was an issue.
Right.
So I'm wondering why you can't get that general ledger in there and run both sides and start comparing what are the differences and maybe identify some of where the problems are.
That's the work
If it
that
is-
we're going to.
That's what you're doing. Okay.
Yes, and one more thing, I wanted to bring this up to the entire board. When we're looking at internal resources, and in this case, a lot of it falls on Kelly R's, Richard's shoulders, and rest of customer service and finance, and also utilities and engineering when it comes to these projects. The AMI, AMR project, we're trying to get it done, so it's taking a lot of resources and time to make sure everything's working correctly. We're still working through some UB issues, but there's only so many hours in the day, and we're doing what we can on the Tyler review project, but we also want to make sure we close up the AMI, AMR project. And so it's just a timing issue. We're still going to be working on it, but we can't dedicate 100% of our time to reviewing the Tyler at this point. Once we get
Especially-
through AMI, AMR, it's going to free up quite a bit of time.
Especially considering where we are in that project before we,
Yeah.
cut that contract.
Well, that makes sense. And the thing is I'm not blaming anybody. Maybe I am Tyler a little bit, but let's say I'm not. I think we just need to revisit where do we go from here? And you
And-
guys are looking into that.
Right, that was the point I was trying to make from the outset, that
Yeah.
even if the annual cost is much less than what we feared in finance committee, we're still gonna work through that.
Well, I think you should. I mean, it's
Have to.
at this point in the game now.
What's a new figure?
We have
Once
that.
we're through implementation, the annual licensing cost will be 75,000 a year.
Are you talking about the whole budget? Pretty much you took off 246,000, give or take. So, and I know 333,000 was based on Tyler.
We
So
all had
a
some
lot.
sticker shock.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, next.
so
I think we've discussed the budget. Are you ready for
Yeah.
adopting it?
Well, you're not looking for approval yet. We're just doing the discussion, right?
And that's a good point, I guess, just to set the stage here. And I think Jeff and his staff did a great job on
Yes.
the staff report. But just, yeah, we're not asking the board for approval of the budget today. This is kind of the budget workshop. We went through it once with finance committee already. We want to go through it with the board. And it will be back before the board at the next board meeting for adoption.
And one other comment, Jeff, at the finance committee meeting, I got that really nice breakdown. That's how I discovered some of those service contracts. I
Yeah.
don't see that in the board packet, or was it? And I'm looking at the handout. Should I be
detail.
looking at the board packet for this?
Right,
Yes,
because I
on
was
the
gonna
board-
ask, where did you see that specifically? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is great, all
Uh-huh.
this detail. I wish all of you had that, and maybe we do,
It's in
Mike.
there, yeah.
It's in the board
It's in the board
packet.
packet,
Okay,
Yeah. It's small.
it looks like this,
To be
yeah,
sure.
yes. And
but
Director
it's
Sick-
got the detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you got to go back and forth a little bit, but here's what I'm talking about. So it says, here's like the contracts and here's how they arrived at the number.
and
So
thank you for
wanna
bringing
hand
that up,
down to her and
Director.
show it to her.
she's got it.
Okay,
Yeah, and-
all right,
and
I'll be
thank you for
quiet now
bringing-
because I've heard all the rest.
It's not in the handout for today, it's in the agenda pack,
What
It's in
page
the
is that?
packet, in the board
Yes.
packet.
page 18.
It's there.
Isn't it?
This is the one for the finance committee, and I only print out
Okay,
certain parts of my package. I'm not gonna print 143 pages. Okay.
all right. So Jeffrey, where are we here?
We are looking at the first slide, which is the preliminary operating budget summary.
We're on slide one.
Slide one. I'm sorry, slide two. Go back. I'm
Slide
sorry.
2. I
Slide
thought
two.
we were already
Right here.
at the end. Got it.
Can you please go back, Rebecca, one?
Yeah.
There we go. So this is the summary that shows the preliminary budget for fiscal 23-24 versus last year's budget. You can see there's some variances, and I'll get into details in just a moment when we get into each individual section. Operating revenues are up. Non-operating revenues, which include property tax revenues and our power from New Hogan and NCPA, are up. transfers in are down. A lot of that is related to the fact that this year, at the end of June 30th, we will pay off the admin building loan. So that is no longer,
Oh, yeah.
so that's no longer included in money coming in to pay the debt. On under
The admin building loan.
the building you're sitting in. On the expenditure side, the biggest takeaway here is services and supplies. And I've known we've talked about this previously, but a lot of that has to do with CPPA increases, chemical cost increases, and fuel increases. And we'll get to that in a little bit later, get into more detail on that.
Jeff, can I ask one question on the building note? Did we refinance that, or was that still being paid back to the
Water fund.
well,
Expansion.
into the different department funds?
Right.
Yes,
You borrowed
Yes,
internally, right?
it
I
was
just want to remind everybody, we paid that back to ourselves.
We
Right.
paid ourselves off. Yes.
Okay, great.
that is
And if I
correct.
could, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
That is correct. This year, it was an internal loan from several different expansion funds that the funds were not needed. We paid them back with interest, and they will be made whole by the end of this fiscal year. And then we can, as you can see, our debt service costs have gone down as well. Michael?
Yeah, I just want to just point something out from the outset here. I know Jeff touches on it in the staff report, and I'm sure is planning to address it in his presentation. But just to make sure we're very clear on the revenue side of things. This includes the assumption that rates will be increased in October. And so I want to make sure we're upfront with the board about the fact that in order to balance the budget the way that we have presented here, we have built in the assumption that the board will approve the rate increase in September that will go into effect in October. This does not bind the board to do that. You could still say no. The board could still reject the proposed, rate increase. You're not bound by the budget document. We would then have to go back and cut a significant amount of the budget out if that's the direction that we go in. But in order to balance the budget based on what we expect the expenditures to be over the next year, we've built that into the revenue. And I just wanted to be with the board about that.
So what you're saying is that on page number 3, right, we have
The
that
next
water
slide, please.
figure and the sewer figure, and that is a rate increase figure.
It is, the rate increase is built into the water sewer sales revenue in the revenue projections for the upcoming fiscal
Is
year.
that how we've typically handled this, Jeff?
Yes,
It doesn't
can
seem-
I ask Rebecca to go to the next slide, because it's going to be this, Michael, you segued right into what we were discussing under this slide.
Yeah, and just,
Yeah.
just to touch on that point, the reason why it hasn't been done that way in the past is because in the past, we typically would adopt the rate increase to go into
Then the
effect in
budget.
July. And so it would have already been done before the budget was adopted. In this case, we had to delay the rate increase a few months. The rate increase is not going before the board until September. So that's why it is different, you're right, this year. But that's why I wanted to be upfront with the board about the fact that it's included in here.
Jeff, before we go on to the next page, though, I'm still on your presentation too. I look at the variances from the report from the finance committee and then now the report today. And under salary and benefits, the variance is 623,000 and change today. Previous was at the finance committee was 357. And it says that you didn't have the new updated insurance benefit costs or something. Is that why there's
That-
such a difference from one report to the other?
Pretty close. It was the PERS unfunded accrued liability cost, the UAL.
Okay, so you didn't have that number for the finance committee report.
That was not included in the finance. That is
Okay.
correct, and that's why the
Thank you.
increase is there.
Okay, move on.
So
Right.
and I just want to build off of what Michael said about the rate study. And I was trying to remember back to 2013. I know we did our rate study our Prop 218 hearing in July. I can't remember if we included the proposed rates in the budget or not. I'd have to go back and research that. But in this particular case, what I looked at was if the projected Prop 218 hearing date is September 13th. The rates will then go into effect October 16th. So we'll have about 8.5 months of whatever increases or changes there'll be in rates and 3.5 months under the current rate structure. But that number that you see there also includes projected, we get new accounts each year, new connections. And then on top of that, I also looked at consumption. I know our consumptive numbers have been down during the drought, and the drought is over. So I'm anticipating increased consumption as well. So that 2.1 million is not all rate increases. It's a combination of new connections, new consumption, higher consumptions, and some projected rate adjustments.
And
Right.
property tax revenue.
Well, that's in the next slide.
Gotcha.
That doesn't come under this water sewer sales. And
Jeff,
excuse me if you, well, I apologize up front. If you hear a dog in the background, I'm taking care of my nephew's dog and he barks on occasion.
Well, Director Davidson has been barking here all day. But he has a question.
I have several comments. One, I definitely want to see you put a current rate revenues and proposed rate revenues, have them side by side. I think it's important that we know where we're at currently, and then so we can see the shortfall, because I think this is misleading a little bit.
Right, because
I mean, there isn't any reason for us to tell the truth about what our current rate structure is, and that we're going to fall short. And so we should have current rate structure, and we should have the proposed rate structure, so the public understands that the reality is we do not have these revenues at this point. It's still going to take action by the board to do that. That's what I.
Right.
Fine with, yeah, we could present it that way. I guess the question would be then, though, do we, if we just did that to make sure we're being transparent. That's why I brought this up from the outset, because we're not trying to hide that fact.
Well, we can't pass a balanced budget.
Yeah, we
We're
can.
not
Well,
gonna be able to-
we can adopt a balanced budget based on projected revenue, and that's what we've presented here.
But it's not,
But-
it's not truthful.
it's not
Yeah.
a real figure.
It's a projection, and we would have to make adjustments to the budget if that revenue increase doesn't go into effect, or a smaller amount goes into effect. It's not, I don't think we're not trying to be misleading at all. We're trying to be upfront.
I know you guys aren't trying to be misleading to us, but I mean, eventually, people are going to show up to this meeting when we start talking about these rate
Right.
increases. And they're going to say, you guys passed the budget, you didn't even have the money. You didn't pass the balanced budget. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it, just.
Well, I think we can balance the budget based on projected revenues. We do that every year. We project revenues from different sources.
Yeah, but those sources are, in our ordinances and rate structure. Currently, this proposal is not, we have not passed a new rate structure.
Right.
So anyway, I just want to see the comparison.
Happy to do that. I guess the
And then-
question would be on the expenditure side, though. We could do that as a way to show what the revenue shortfall would be and what a deficit would look like. But the final adopted budget would still include the projected revenue. And
Well, I
unless,
assume our rate study's doing the exact same thing. You guys have to, you have to show that as well, right? You have to have those numbers in there.
well, but the question is, if you want the revenue that we adopt in the budget to only reflect the existing rate structure, we're gonna have to make significant cuts.
I want to see both. I mean, I want to see the comparison. I want the revenues. Let's talk about current revenues.
I understand that on the revenue side. If we do that on the expenditure side, we're gonna have to make huge budget cuts between now and the next.
Well, show the deficit, and then as we go line by line, we'll say, well, we got to cut here or cut there, and it sets over here. So if we get a rate study, we can pull that in.
Yeah, I think it's premature to expect
Lot of work.
this board to give everything that you guys are asking for. in the new rates. I don't know that I'm gonna go that way, but I mean, we haven't got there yet, so
Right.
I think we should be prepared. You know, I haven't talked to any of the other board members about this, but I hear their comments. We're all, you know, nobody wants to do what we're being proposed. We all know it needs to be done.
Right.
But I mean, don't get me wrong, I know it needs to be done, but that doesn't mean I want to do it. You know, but then I also have another question on back in 13, Jeff.
Yes,
The primary component of the rate increase was all, it was all earmarked for capital improvement programs.
R&R.
R&R, yeah, I'm sorry.
that was
So-
the outcome, yes.
Okay, so is that percentage that we committed to back then, is that intact in our new rate?
It's, yeah, in fact, it wasn't a percentage, it was a fixed dollar amount that is still there. But so we're definitely veering off the agenda into rate study, but just to briefly answer that question, we had a discussion about that at Finance Committee. The recommendation from our rate consultant is not necessarily to carry forward that bifurcated rate structure, but also to make sure, you know, the discussion we're having at the staff level is how do we make sure we codify that commitment to capital infrastructure expenditures. If it's not embedded in the rate structure, which creates some accounting issues, there's other ways to make sure that we're not reducing or that funding is committed to capital spending still. So that's the work that we're doing right now that we'll bring back.
Well,
to the
Yeah,
finance
Jeff,
committee.
in the finance committee, both Scott and I did not agree with what Michael was just saying. Scott and I thought it should stay at that dollar amount, and we actually bring back explaining what the accounting issues were, so.
And if there might be,
Well, here's the deal, there's a whole new list of projects. And there's a fixed dollar amount that we're committing to that we're committing. So it seems to me to be pretty simple math that if we do a rate increase, I mean, I want to be able to tell the public that, listen, we promise that money is going to those infrastructure.
right, exactly. And
That's
so
what we
what
need to be able to commit to.
the only thing that we would propose would be a different way of going about that, not taking that away. So, and we think we can do it better than just by having the R&R fixed portion of the rate. So we're going to bring back to the finance committee. Here's what the issues with that are. Here's a better way to do it that still protects that funding that's dedicated to project financing, but is a different model than what we've had in the past.
But in that new model potentially would be included in any rate increases, so we could still know that it's separate money,
That's all I have at this time.
right? Because I think Scott and I both wanted to be able to see that in a rate increase,
Understood.
we wanted,
Yep, we understand exactly what the board priority is there, and we want to preserve that as well. So that's the work that we're doing right now that we'll bring back.
Okay, Michael, in response to what Jeff was asking about, that we have a presentation that shows where we would be if we didn't increase the rates.
Yeah.
You launched into, well, we'd have to also adjust expenditures. I don't think you're not asking for that. You're just, you're trying to graphically demonstrate where we would be if we know what we're committed to spend. We don't want you to adjust expenditures to make a balanced budget on the old rate structure.
Well, so that's the question, because I thought you did want that.
No.
show the deficit, and then let's say it's, $3 million or whatever it is.
Currently, we have a certain amount of revenue. That's the fact. But we're creating a budget on proposed revenue that is not a fact.
So
And I want to have a tool to show what our deficit will be if the board says no.
So that's not a problem at all. We can demonstrate what the deficit would be. The deeper question is, do you also want us to demonstrate exactly which line items we would have to cut if we didn't see that revenue increase? And that's it. We can do that. It's a different work effort.
Well, you'll show each line item in their deficit or not. And we're not asking to whittle it down yet, just show it to us. And then, we're still going to this rate study. And if we have over 50% or whatever that number is, the ratepayer saying, no, you're not going to do it. We have to live with what we have, right?
Yeah.
Well, so then if
with
we
that
just,
said,
if we just look at the deficit on the revenue side, we wouldn't go through line by line and demonstrate what each GL's deficit would be.
You weren't asking for that, were you?
No, but I mean, it could come to that.
I
Exactly,
think
and
we
that's what
should.
we would have to do
Right.
if we don't have the revenue, the
But-
projected revenue increase, which we would do anyways. Let's say property tax projection,
Yeah.
we project that
But-
every year. If it doesn't live up to that projection, we would bring a budget amendment back to the board that says we're gonna have to cut spending. So it's no different than other projections. I understand there is a distinction there because of
but
the
it
rate.
doesn't look right, and it just, I like to see, here's one with it, here's one without. And what if, we decide to not go the amount that the consultants are recommending? And
Yeah,
what if it's
because we
lower? I
don't
think
know
should work with what
specific-
we have, know where our deficits are, and, from that point, say, okay, and I would like to see it by each department. It didn't have to be nitty gritty, like the contracts that I was looking at. But let's look at that deficit for each line item department. And then when we get to, you would have to, like, let's say we got to pull out of this fund to balance our budget, because you have to have a balanced budget.
Right.
And then, I mean, we could even say, we're gonna project a loan, or we have to get a loan, whatever that is. We balance it, and then with what happens at the rate study, then we update the budget with the current revenues.
Can I ask one other question,
Yeah.
kind of unrelated, but in regards to our property taxes, are we considering them to be flat or going positive?
It's
They are
going up
going-
about,
They will be going up, and that's based on projections from the county.
looks like it's about 400,000 going up.
Based on more property, or property values are definitely declining, or at least it's flat.
Well, there's also the ability to raise property taxes each year, and I believe it's capped at 2% for assessed
2%.
value. So I think
Right,
that's
and the
part of
assessed
the county.
value is still, yeah, they're a couple years
So
behind.
we're just taking the 2%, assuming that that's gonna be the increase, or how do we? What figure and what metrics do we use to project the revenue increase for property tax?
We start with taking a look at historical, and then the county provides us with their projections for property taxes and what our costs will be on our improvement, our revenues will be on our improvement districts. And that comes out to a $359,000 increase over last year. So it's less than, it's about an 8% increase.
Has that been reliable in the past?
Actually, they've tended to underrepresent what actual property taxes will be. So they underestimate on a conservative side. And
Regarding the collection of the property tax, whatever the county assess, they'll pay us all that. It just depends on, and then if the property owners don't pay, the county takes the loss. Is that right?
that is correct. We're on the
And then
teeter
they
plan.
can auction it. Okay.
And if I may go back to Director Davidson's question regarding how much revenues were included in the water sewer sales projections for new, from the rate study, it's just a little north of 1.8 million. So about 300,000 is new accounts and additional consumptive revenue. A little over about 1.8 million is the new rate revenue projections. So I could easily pull that out so you could see what the changes will be, what the deficit will be, and then we can go forward from there.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, I have a question for you about this property tax revenue. Somewhere in my mind, I have always thought that we got about 4 million a year from the county for property taxes. Am I wrong about that? Is it 3 million that we've been used to getting, or is it 4?
If I go back historically, Rebecca, can you please go to the next slide?
Yeah, we're on to page 2 now.
And I'm going back a few years here. Back in 2008, our property tax revenues were 3.2, 3.3 million but then the Great Recession hit and they dropped. They're slowly
Okay.
starting to go back up, but we've
Okay.
never really, one of the things to think about here is this is the amount of money going into the operating fund. We're still putting money, I think it's about 300,000 that goes into the special project fund in 108. So in totality, we're getting close to about 3.9 million. We haven't hit 4 million since the 2008. I know that sounds really odd, but that's where we are. And
No,
as
I don't remember 4.
It's 3.9. That's close enough. For horseshoes and hand grenades. Anyway,
Okay, and then I just want to make sure I'm clear on the board direction. So we'll definitely highlight what the projected increases from revenue increases from rates. And then maybe the middle ground here might be, instead of going back through and building a separate budget as well, we'll have I'll work with the department heads to identify, because there's actually not a ton in terms of expenditures that we have a lot of discretion over. And so we'll just flag those areas, and we'll be prepared to talk about what might be cut if we don't see those revenue projections.
When I think about an increase in revenues and I'm putting it back on what kind of a percentage increase we're going to have in the rates, and that's how I can better figure, because you can just give me a figure. I mean, you can give me an amount and I have no idea what.
80%.
yeah.
Well, so that's the first meeting in July, I think it's July 12th. We'll be presenting the cost of service study and the rate design to the board at that meeting in July.
Oh,
That's
okay,
when
so
we'll
we'll
get
hear
into
more
the details.
specifics.
We'll get all the details at that point, and we'll lay out the whole report for the board at that point, and then we'll finish the rate study process from there.
Because if a budget doesn't get approved, then we're going to have to go on.
You mean if the rate increase doesn't get approved?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So hopefully we'll have an approved budget this month.
Uh-huh. Well,
If the rate increase is not approved, then yeah, we would have to make budget adjustments based on the revenue. Right.
Okay.
Page 3.
okay, just a few
Moving right along.
footnotes here on this page. There's a large decrease in interest income. The interest income on these are for the water fund and the sewer fund. Sewer fund right now is actually negative by about 2.7 million. The water fund has a positive balance of about a similar amount, 2.8, 2.9 million. When you have a negative balance in the sewer fund, it doesn't earn any interest. And this is all a result of having to go back and pull out and get rid of Fund 101, our admin's fund. For backing up a second, several years ago, the auditor said we had to get rid of 101. Some of our expenses were put in 101 and then split at year end into water and sewer. We did that originally. They didn't like the methodology because it was split into some restricted funds. So we had to reverse all that. And then last year we did it in a different methodology, only going to unrestricted funds. The auditor signed off on that. Unfortunately, that left a larger deficit in the sewer fund and reduced our surplus in the water fund. So that's why you're going to see a change in the budgeted amount in interest income, just because we have lower fund balances. And that's one of the other things that's being addressed in the rate study. As we already talked about property taxes, new power sales are up. The North Fork, that's increased by an engineering inflation indicator. New Hogan is up. It's currently, we budgeted $80,000 last year based on drought. This, with all the rains and everything, we're above our budget for next year at $210,000. and we still missed 2 months. I think it was either November, December, or December, January, when when MID shut down for some repairs and renovations. So I feel very comfortable in looking at 210,000 for next year. Future years at New Hogan, it may go down. And then that non-operating revenue, a significant portion of that comes from reimbursements from NCPA for some of our permits relating to our power permits and such, and also MID. As those go up, they reimburse us for those increases. That's why you see some increases in that area as well. Any questions on non-operating revenues?
No.
Next slide, please. Transfers in. This is where we move money from other funds into the operating fund to pay for things like debt, that first line item. It comes from the water and sewer R&R funds, 125, 120, 135. And in the past, it came in from 108, special project fund for the admin building loan. Obviously, they have gone down because of some of our loans have changed a little bit, and then also getting rid of the admin building loan, which was pretty close to $700,000 in principal and interest. We moved money coming in from the CIP funds to pay for salaries and benefits for those employees who work on those projects. And then we also have money coming in from the R&R funds for water. As you can see, 630. A significant portion of that is for our underground utilities crew. We have close to $585,000 coming in from Fund 108 into the cap to help fund some of our capital outlay purchases. We also have $145,000 coming from Fund 108 to fund our FERC relicensing effort. And that will be discussed within the water resources budget. All in all, our revenues and transfers in amount to $27.4 million. Any questions? This slide shows our operating budget for salaries and benefits by department. Our total costs for the upcoming year are just under 12.7 million, which is a $623,000 increase. Some of this is attributed to regular step increases, COLA increases, but there's also increases, $145,000 increases in medical insurance. One of the things to take a look at that is interesting to note, our PERS costs are actually going down from the prior year. And that's because several years back, they had a 21% increase, a 21% rate of return on their investments. But that number isn't going to last long because the following year they lost money. So unfortunately, those savings will disappear next year. Next slide. This is just a summary of all the expenses under services and supplies for each of the departments by a category. I'm not going to go into detail on each and every one here. The variances column on the right is really what we need to look at. I know I've talked about this time and time again, but when you look at the very first line, power, the significant portion of that is CPPA. Yes, we have some PG&E costs, but most of it is CPPA. They increased rates twice in fiscal year 22-23, 60% on July 1, and then another 40% this spring. We're anticipating an increase of just under 590,000. But to put this in perspective, when you look at over the last 3 years, our energy costs have gone up almost $1.3 million, or 244%. That's a huge impact on our budget. And there's no way of getting around that. We need to fund that.
Did we, is there any part of that that we're being reimbursed with, disaster declaration?
For power costs?
Yeah.
No, not that I can think of. Those are just our electricity bills.
We didn't have additional,
Expenses?
Not associated with the actual electricity being.
that would just be like, but with fuel and things of that nature, we did, and we,
Yes, yes, and yes. Yeah, fuels.
is there a revenue category for that?
For fuel. There's
No, for the
revenue.
for the disaster reimbursement.
I don't think we would have I don't think we built that into revenue.
The request.
Yep.
The
On
January
that, Director Davidson,
249 expenditures.
I did not project any anticipated revenues from reimbursements because we don't know exactly what we're going to get back. But when it does come in, we do identify that and it's put into non-operating revenues.
Okay. But we are anticipating
Yes.
recouping our expenses.
Yes,
Right.
that's true. Yeah.
Then you go to the, one more line item that I wanted to show under this, and I'm really trying to highlight those large dollar amount and changes. Under meters, new and replacement, you see $50,000. Well, the bulk of that is, and Damon can address this, is two distribution system meters, two large meters. It's not our regular replacement meters for residential homes.
Right.
Next slide, please. Here under chemicals, you can see our prices, our costs have gone up significantly. We're going to spend just under $553,000 on chemicals, which is an increase of $178,000.
Just one item here. Groundwater monitoring, 51,000. Is that that's a state mandate or what is that?
So is that wastewater or CASGen? Those are separate.
Yeah, they're separate, but
Yeah.
yes. The wastewater and groundwater well monitoring is the regulatory.
We have to monitor the groundwaters around the ponds.
Around wastewater.
Okay.
And then you have 145,000 for paving, sealing, asphalt repair.
Yes.
Has that been tempered because of our new machine or?
It has, yes. It
Yeah,
has.
it's a great
Good
question.
call, Bert.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, it has, but then there was the consideration of, after this year, after we understand how much work we can do with the actual machine, whether or not we can actually reduce it further. So, but yes, it has.
Because I think, if I remember correctly, it was at 165 before.
Yes. Yeah.
So we already reduced that line item in anticipation of buying that piece of equipment. And the hope is, as Damon said, in future years, it might go down even more.
Any questions on this page?
No. No. Get on with it.
There we go. Some of the highlights here are professional services. A large chunk of that is coming out of water resources. And that was the NCPA relicensing effort, about $200,000 worth. Half of that is being paid for by NCPA and the other half is coming from the FERC relicensing fund in 108. So if you see the $200,000 in water resources, only half of that is our responsibility, but we don't offset the expenditure, we show it in revenues. We also have a
Jeff.
$106,000 increase in fuel.
So Jeff, on, I'm comparing, what you gave us at the finance committee to what I'm seeing today. And under director elections, it's 1,500 less than what you showed at the finance meeting. Any particular reason why?
Because I overestimated the number of seats that are up for
Awesome.
election.
All right, thank you. But I'm glad it's less.
Yes.
Jeff, I have a question. You highlighted professional services. They're at 174,000, and you went on to talk about part of that is for the FERC relicensing that's being funded by 108. What is the balance? I think that if I recall, we got a $4 million,
It's a little over 5 million.
5 million in 108.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and at the expense of what, $550 an hour, it's only gonna, our legal expenses are gonna be depleted.
Well, so the majority of that effort is not legal. There's no legal cost there. But I'm glad you flagged that just to talk about it a little bit more detail. Because I think we're entering into a phase now where we're going to start to see higher expenditures on that side. And we have that reserve to draw from, but obviously reserve spending isn't sustainable in the long run as we get further into this process. So one of the things that we're focusing on over this next year is really identifying what the long-term cost obligation is going to be and how we're going to fund it, because we can't just spend, we can't just spend that reserve down over the course of the next 9 years. We have to have other sources of revenue identified, and we can't use rate funds for that. So that's a high priority as we utilize that reserve, is to make sure that we're identifying the sources of revenue that are going to fund the broader relicensing effort.
Okay, good.
Any other
Next
questions
page.
on this slide? Okay. The biggest item here is in looking at retiree health costs. That's for the health insurance we provide to current retirees. Unfortunately, health insurance goes up. We have a few more retirees and one less retiree that you're looking at him. So we're looking at about a $68,000 increase there. We do have some offsets, some lower costs in some of the other areas. And forgive me if I didn't mention this earlier. Working with each department, they really went through this process with an effort on towing the line or even reducing costs. So when you look at some of these items and see the cost reductions under the variance columns, it's because of that effort that they went through and identified savings. It wasn't as if they said, let's just keep it as normal. They looked at each line item and put a lot of effort into this. And then we reviewed it in admin services, and Michael reviewed it as well. So if you're looking at the biggest line items, if you throw in power, if you throw in chemicals, if you throw in fuel, those are the things that are outside our control. And those are the biggest drivers when you see that cost increase.
I have a question on third-party payment processing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Don't we retrieve those fees?
the majority, yes.
But we still end up paying 33,600?
Well, let me go into detail on that, Director Underhill. There's two components of third-party processing fees. One is global pay, that is the processing, what you're talking about regarding credit card and payments over using the internet and over the phone. That has gone down significantly, but we also use CPI lockbox for our check processing. Customers have no longer send their checks. They haven't for several years to CCWD for us to process. We use an outside service for that, and that's about $12,000 a year.
I would do it for less.
Well, I see that you lowered the cost in this report versus the finance report, which I was glad to see. But at the finance report, you had 42,000 projected budget. Now it's 33,600. So that's great.
Yes. And that is a whole lot less than what we have year to date. As of March 31st, we had already spent 120,000 for this fiscal year. So costs are going to go down dramatically in that area.
And I'm so glad they are.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Next page, capital outlay and debt services. I'm going to get into a lot more detail. I've got a better slide for capital outlay, but as you can see, we have money for current leases, and this is our lease to own for vehicles, some new vehicles that we're hoping to purchase, some equipment, and also some projects and utilities. Engineering has 7,000 for a lot line finder, if I'm not mistaken. And then in the as far as the debt service is concerned, what you're looking at here is a list of all the different loans we have, anywhere from our PERS loan to our USDA loans for AMI and Reach 3A, the loans we have for our VACON trucks, and also the CIP loans that we took out recently.
Would it be difficult to put an expiration date next to each of these loans?
I can do that very easily.
Yeah, that's good information.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the New Hogan
Yeah.
loan, some of the, certainly the long-term one, New Hogan is gonna be paid off soon, am I wrong?
I think either next year or the following years, but yes, you're correct. It's almost paid off.
I don't know, I'd find that to be helpful.
I will do that.
Is that agendized?
Hmm?
Does that change agenda?
I didn't name it after anybody, I just asked.
There we go. Any questions on this slide?
How did you know I came up here with Clydesdales?
Okay. Now we're going to get into the individual departments. If you want to get into detail, I've got some summaries here to go through quickly. As you can see, this is a comparison from the budget for 22-23 to the preliminary budget for this year by department. Board of Directors goes down 17,500. You see other adjustments, whether it's general management going up, admin services going down, and a preview of that. That's moving the external affairs manager from admin services over to general management. That's the bulk of it. Utility services, I've already touched on the power, chemicals, and fuel, and water resources. A lot of that is the FERC relicensing efforts and non-departmental, and I'll get into more detail. That's the PERS UAL and also retiree health.
So did I hear you say that 353,000 can be blamed on John Osborne?
I'd say at least that, Matt, at least that much.
Wow.
They're in cost increases, and I'll go over that in just a moment.
Where is it?
Is he not there to defend himself?
He's here. He's hiding his head.
There we go. Next slide, please. Under non-departmental, the increase in salary and benefits, Director Cicada, that 265, that's a UAL for past employees. The services and supplies increases. Part of that increase is moving internet and phone expenditures out of admin services into non-departmental because it helps all, it really benefits all departments. And then retiree health costs, an increase of about 68,000.
Jeff, you said moving, IT services, phone, et cetera. Is that like one-time cost and then next fiscal year will be more of a maintenance cost?
Actually, I should have been more clear. It's moving the budget for internet and phones out of admin services into non-departmental.
Sorry,
That's
okay.
No, that's a very good question. And then we talked about debt service. So all in all, the total expenditures for non-departmental is decreasing about 525,000. Utility services. Salaries and benefits have gone down a little bit. The service and supplies, I've talked to that time and time again. Capital outlay, it has gone up. And again, I'll talk about capital outlay in a minute, a little bit more detail. But again, I just have to take my hat off to Damon, Jesse, Pat, and Mike Crank for going through the budget and identifying areas where they could actually save money.
Thanks, guys.
Next slide, please. So we'll call this the John Osborne slide. In looking at this, salary and benefits, that's not all him. There's COLAs included in that, increases in health benefits and so forth. Under services and supplies, the $88,000 increase is mainly due to moving uniform costs out of utilities into general management. HR is now handling that and managing the uniform costs. We've increased professional services for employee safety training and then some new payroll processing. Those two combined came up to about 47,000. But a lot of that increase, as I mentioned, for we're allocating $25,000, a new cost for employee safety training, because obviously that's an ongoing responsibility of the district to keep their employees up to date in different training methods, safety requirements. And I know Stacy and Michael and Damon and Pat and Jesse take this very seriously. Any questions for, okay. This is where we see a cost decrease on budgets. And this is basically due under salary and benefits to a change in a benefit selection for health insurance. And the $1,500 decrease was on the elections cost. Any questions?
No.
So 16,000 is a decrease in just benefits for board members? Is
Yeah.
there
Yes.
really? Well, I'm not taking them.
That's,
That's a huge one?
Yeah.
Awesome, you're welcome. See, I cut the budget too.
thank you, Director Skata. The other, this is a small one, but just, and you guys might have already talked about this, Jeff and Rebecca, but the election costs, our next election is not till November 24. Do we incur those costs in the next fiscal year, or will that be in the following fiscal
Yep,
year?
probably in 2024.
24, 25.
Yeah.
Well, if they're,
No, because in January, February.
I'll double
Are the
check
election
on that.
costs, are the election costs November of 24, I guess is the question.
Yeah, or earlier in the year.
Then we could take that down to 0 for this coming fiscal year, I would think.
Just see it, Might be before, because don't they have?
And
to-
that's my question.
Yeah, because it might
Yeah.
be before, because I think they have to
Put it on.
get all your stuff in there before June 30th for
It may,
that
it may
election.
be. So we could just double check that and see with the timing.
Yeah, and they usually have the June sort of primary and there's,
But we don't participate in that. So I don't know when we get the bill though.
right. So I can
think it's
double
something
check
that has
that,
to be
but
done before June.
Yeah. next slide, please. Engineering costs, part of the increase in salaries and benefits is fully funding all the positions now. We had vacancies and part-time filling for the prior year. So that's the increase that you see there, along with benefit costs increases. And then also under services and supplies, IT is now charging individual departments for some of their laptop replacements, but the admin also is looking at a large format plotter scanner, which runs about between that and the laptop replacements is about 11,000. And then there's computer licenses as well. That's kind of part of this process, which is includes AutoCAD, Parcel Quest. We have to pay for individual seats, and I think we talked about this at the Finance Committee meeting, Director Cicada, and we're only paying for the seats that we actually need.
Thank you. Which, how many is that?
Pardon me?
How many seats is that?
For Parcel Quest, it's 3. And I believe so for the others as well. Oh, one other item, and this comes under capital outlay. They have requested $7,000 for a line locator for their inspectors. This is a replacement as the other one's worn out and broken. So that falls under capital outlay. Admin services. As you can see, there's a decrease in salaries and benefits. That's due in part to moving John over to general management. We also have a decrease in services and supplies. A good part of that is the decrease of $75,000 in the rate study, because we've paid a lot of that during this fiscal year, and a decrease in third-party payment processing of about $13,000.
Jeff, at the finance meeting for materials, supplies under admin services, it only was $250. And I think you were going to look into it to make sure that wasn't a typo.
That is a correct amount,
Okay.
because a lot of the supplies that went along with water resources and I'm sorry, for public outreach for water conservation, that went to general management, as well as any outreach and newsletters and things like that. That all moved out of Department 59 Admin Services over to general management and went with John.
So what does $250 get admin services for materials and supplies? Pencils, pens?
Things like
It
that.
seems like a
exactly.
really low number.
We actually, once we moved John out of there, our budget went way, way down. But yes, we really don't spend a whole lot of dollars just in our own supplies.
All right, just checking.
Certainly, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Any other questions on admin services? Water resources. Under salaries and benefits, there was an increase, some of it due in part to health insurance. The other part is we're fully funding the water resources technician for the entire year. I think I've already talked about services and supplies about the increase of $200,000 for the North Fork relicensing project, but we've also had some decreases there. And part of those decreases are coming from mandated plans, which we're pretty get close to finishing the update for the local hazard mitigation plan. So some of those expenditures have decreased. and here's the capital outlay budget. It's a lot easier to see than the one I had earlier. As you can see, we have approximately $73,000 for lease to own vehicles, $169 for current leases, and we're hoping to get 12 new vehicles, so that'll increase some of our costs. Under equipment, there's, and Damon, Damon, I'm hoping you're there to help me out through some of this equipment. There's a vac trailer for West Point, some push cams, GPS vehicle systems, and for the courtyard, tire balancer, some equipment and furniture. As I mentioned, the line locator for the inspectors, and under projects, sand filter rehab for La Contenta, Copper Cove, that's a demolition of the old water treatment site and pump station, ozone unit replacement in copper for $300,000, UPS replacement, and critical generator replacement, and that's our 25% match from FEMA.
That's it?
Yes.
I have a question about the demolition of the Copper Cove old water treatment plant. 50,000 is it possible that we could demolish that and move pipelines or whatever sufficiently that could be a saleable lot?
That's the objective.
Is it?
Yeah, so there's a large pressure vessel on the site that we need to cut up and remove. We need to get in the ground, excuse me, hydraulically disconnect the piping. And then there's, so the way it used to backwash is there's a pipe down to Lake Tulloch. And so we need to properly cap that and seal that pipe off so we can make that a saleable lot.
And that would be a, what, half-acre lot, three-quarter-acre lot?
It might be a half acre. I'm not completely sure. And then there's also the building at the Kiva boat ramp as well, which we would like to start to rehabilitate or at least prepare to allow others to take advantage of.
Somebody ought to take it up with the management of Copper Cove Homeowners Association to see if that in fact could be a saleable lot. I mean, if we currently pay $235 a year to the association for the homeowner's fee or the property owner's fee, then it should be a saleable lot. Otherwise, maybe not.
Right. Yeah. And we'll absolutely work on that.
Okay.
Is it zone public service? Probably.
I believe so.
You put a 7-Eleven on it.
I
Yeah.
don't think they would. like that.
We'll have to, yeah, objective number one is to get
Clean it.
get the pressure vessel out of there and disconnect the treated water piping from the system. And same objective at the Kiva building, because the raw water piping is still connected to the pumps in the basement.
Yeah, well, they have repeatedly requested that they take ownership of that building, so
Right.
they could use it.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about the distraction, but
I wonder if we could broaden the description of the use of those funds, because if we could do it for less than that and then have anything left over for the Jenny Lind house.
That's yeah, absolutely.
Because
Maybe-
it may not take a ton to rehab that
Right.
a little bit to.
Yeah.
Jeff, could we just say,
Facility.
Building
building
rehab.
rehab?
Yeah, exactly.
Facility
and-
rehab.
Just so we have the flexibility to prioritize and maybe spread that around a little bit more.
Can do.
didn't you say you wanted to move your office down to that?
It's a heck of a spot.
Yeah, riverfront property.
Yeah, it's really cold water though, man. Gosh, it's frustrating. Especially when it's really hot out.
Would it be a closer commute for you?
It's about the same.
Oh,
Yeah, it's about the same.
I have a question. You have two columns, a preliminary and a final. The final doesn't mean final for whatever the description is. It just means the final payment, right?
Where are you?
Where are you?
Oh, excuse me, on page 21, still on.
Yeah, we haven't moved on to that one.
Oh,
She's up there with me.
Got it.
Okay, moving on, 21.
Final doesn't mean final on this particular loan. It just means the final payment
So
for the year.
that's the final budget for 22-23 preliminary. What we're presenting to you today is the preliminary
Uh-huh.
23-24 budget.
Okay.
That, actually, I could change that. That should have been adopted budget for
Yeah,
22-23.
But this really is the page that we need to have. It'd be nice to have those expiration.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I like that idea.
can do. And I know we've talked about this before. Are there any questions on this?
No,
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 There we go. Okay. CIP budgets, water and sewer. A lot of this was discussed in the prior 5-year CIP plans. We've looked at this at great length. We've made some changes in the format. We've broken it out by divisions, and you can see the project budget, the expenses to date, projected balance. The blue column under fiscal year 23-24 is what we project to spend next year on these projects. And we also show the cash flow for the following 2 years. And then off to the right are the funding sources. Funding sources are either expansion funds, the capital R&R fund, this current CIP loan, and then we do have grants coming in to help offset some of our costs. And that's one of the things we constantly look at is how can we acquire grant funding to offset our costs?
And this is just a minor comment, Jeff. I thought we had talked about it's not based on division, just based on water service area. And so consolidating Jenny and having Wallace separate would be the only change.
Okay.
I just don't want to give people the impression that we make CIP decisions based on director division. No offense, directors, but that's not what.
yeah,
the
sure, we
division.
won't look at it that way.
But I think it's helpful to have it organized by service area. So I like that change.
Yeah, that was our suggestion, to put it that way.
Yeah.
But like I see that Division 2 gets kicked to the curb a little bit, so.
I can make that change.
That's great.
The next page shows our sewer budget. Just as we're looking at about 10, for water, it was about 10.7 million for 23-24. The sewer projected budget is 14.5 million. So the combined CIP budget for combined water and sewer for next year is just over 25 million. In here, some of our key projects is the La Contenta Biolac Clarifier UV. The West Point Wellesleyville Consolidation Project should be coming to a close next year and finishing up. We have the Arnold Secondary Clarifier Project coming on. We're working on that. And if I do believe we're also looking at possibly getting some grant money for that. Is that correct, Michael?
Or
Arnold,
which one?
the
Yeah,
secondary
so
clarifier.
We were ready to go out or are ready to go out to bid on that, I think. But when we looked at because Arnold is one of those communities that's partially a DAC, and we looked at when we zoom in on the area that the wastewater treatment plant serves, we think we have it's possible that we're eligible for grant funds. And so we kind of pumped the brakes on it a little bit just to get that application process started with the water board. Because if for any of these projects, if there's grant funds out there, we want to secure those first. And so it'll slow that down a little bit, hopefully not too much because we're already at the design and 100% design phase. But we want to move it forward as quickly as possible. At the same time, we had a spill there last year. It's a critical project.
The other item of note here, and Michael can help expand upon this, is our projects down at Copper Cove, the Pond 6 dam raise, tertiary DAF and UV improvements through this is a core project, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And the budget that we have, I'm sorry, let me step back a second. And Michael, correct me if I'm not explaining this the right way. The Corps is now the project lead on these two projects. They will manage it, they will pay the bills, and they will charge us our amount. So the amount identified in the project budget is our cost. It's not the total project cost. Am I correct in that, Michael?
Yeah, and there's that's a unique one for us, and I think that's a good way to do it. We're close to, well, not close to final on the dam we are, but we're well into the engineering and environmental process on those projects as well. There's some question as to exactly how much of the remaining authorized and funding amount we will be able to secure for this current fiscal year. What we're hoping for and what the Army Corps has requested through Senator Feinstein's office that we're supporting is the full remaining authorization in the Section 219 authorization, which is a total of 13.2 million. $2 million has already been appropriated to the district over the last 2 fiscal years. And through the Army Corps and through Senator Feinstein's office, we've requested the remaining 11.2 million so that we can fully fund the project and award a construction contract within the next federal fiscal year. And it'll also coincide with our fiscal year. So really it's an overestimate here, although looking at the cash flow, I think those are conservative numbers, mainly to complete in environmental and engineering. But the target, if we can get things moving through the bureaucratic process, is to award a construction contract next summer. So we won't be spending CCWD dollars on construction, most likely within the next fiscal year. That would be great. I don't think we'll be there yet. But by next summer, we're hoping to be able to award a construction contract. And as Jeff mentioned, as the rules of the program have changed over time, what we know now is that Corps will award that contract in consultation with CCWD, but the Corps will award that contract, pay the contractor directly, and then we will make either in-kind contributions that we can get credit for our work, staff time, etc., or pay our share, as the local sponsor, our share to the Corps as a part of the project fund. So that's how the funding structure will work for that project. And we may go back in the next WRDA, not this time around, but as we had already increased that authorization from 3 million to 13.2. If in order to complete both of those projects that we've been pursuing, what we know now is it will be more than $13.2 million. So we may go back in the next WRDA cycle and request an increase in that authorization.
Michael, I'm kind of puzzled about the timeline for that Pond 6 dam raise. You shows here that you budgeted for expenditure of $667,000 in fiscal year 23-24. But then you go over with almost $2 million a year for 24-25 and also 25-26. There's no way that if they start construction on raising that dam, that's going to take 3 years to do the work. So
I hope not. But based on how projects have gone lately with supply chain issues, because we have to remember we have to relocate all of the utilities off the backside of the dam too. So it's not just increasing the size of the dam, it's pump stations and pipelines and other utilities that are associated with it. And so it may speed up, and I think we could adapt to that. And also the bureaucratic process of the Army Corps is not necessarily fast. So I would love for it to be faster than that, and we could accommodate that with our budget. But I don't know that it will be.
Okay, well, you guys are the engineers, but that pond fills up most winters, even in a
Yeah,
drought condition. So if you don't get the piping done fairly soon, it's soon in the process. No, yeah.
it won't happen until, right, we can't award the contract yet. But that would be the first stage of the process. One of the things that we are hoping to be able to do, as soon as we can get the project partnership agreement approved from the Corps, is the first expenditure of funds will be completing the environmental and engineering, and then also pre-purchasing some equipment that will help the tertiary filter make it for the next few years until we can complete the overall project. But if we can buy some of the equipment and install some of that equipment in advance, or do some other work on the filter, that'll help us get through the next several years of dam raise construction.
What have we purchased or spent the $500,000 so far on that pond raise?
Engineering. So that's been a combination of those two projects. We have an engineering consultant that was working full speed on engineering design and environmental review. We had been told by the Corps that those expenditures would be reimbursable, and then the guidance for the program changed. So we are no longer eligible for reimbursement for those funds. And once we received the new guidance from the Corps, we stopped work, and fortunately we're working with a really good and very flexible engineering consultant on this project. And so he agreed to just stop work until we can get the letter report approved, which is the precursor to the project partnership agreement. Once the letter report is approved, we can then do work that we will receive the in-kind contribution for. But any work that we've done up until now, we will not receive in-kind contribution for or reimbursement.
Okay,
That's the call we got in mid-March, informing us that new guidance had been released the week before and the rules of the program had changed.
Can we move on to the
Next
my
step,
favorite page in this report?
the last page.
page 1.
That's it.
There we go.
Before we
So-
start over,
I'll go ahead and incorporate your comments, your direction, looking at the revenues without any rate adjustments and all the other changes that you've requested. We'll bring that proposed budget back to the board June 28th, and that's when we're looking for adoption.
All righty then.
Thanks for all your hard work, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Everybody, I mean, it's in depth
Yes.
for sure.
it
This
is
is
a
definitely a
team
team
effort.
effort.
And Jeff mentioned it already, but really appreciate all the department heads going back through it repeatedly and identifying opportunities to where we can save and trim, and prioritizing as well. And also Jeff, under challenging circumstances, doing really incredible work. So thank you, Jeff.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank,
My pleasure.
thanks,
Thank you.
Jeff.
Maybe we should name the pipeline after him.
Hey,
We
I
named
got
this
new
the Jeff
plumbing,
Meyer-
so why not?
Annual budget.
Okay, moving on. We have a report by a guy named Damon Wyckoff. Oh, yes, sir.
You said that you did budget on projected rate increase. Thank you. Your projected rate increase, just by looking at your first page there, it looks like you're figuring about 18% for water and about 10% for sewer.
So it's hard to project just based on the overall total. Because it'll depend on customer class and category. That's the breakdown that we're going to get into the detail will be at the July 12th meeting.
Okay,
But
but
the projection is the overall revenue increase from rates is actually a little bit higher than that, because I think the number that you're looking at is the annualized number.
Yeah.
And we're only going to be able to implement those rates for 8.5 months.
Okay.
So the
and-
actual rate increase will be slightly higher than those numbers.
Okay. and-
Sorry, I shouldn't get ahead of the board here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If it
no, I
goes
get it.
that
I just wanted to see where, you know, the 1.8 million number of the rate increase that,
Right.
Jeff.
That's all.
By the way, Jeff, thank you very much for your hard work.
That all
my
remains to be seen. That's all a big if. So question.
Oh, that's, I got it. The other question is the $1 million you have set aside for the, on the wastewater, Copper Cove, cross country. The sewer main, I'm assuming that's going from Town Square to the, treatment plant?
No,
Is that
no.
the wrong one?
That's a different project.
Okay,
So
where was that?
By
The-
Cobra Mena.
Wait, where?
By
Oh, Cobra Mina?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
That
Thank
can
you very
serve
much.
existing customers. The town center force main, just to touch on that briefly, is moving forward. It's well into design already, but it's not in our CIP because it's a developer funded project, so we're not paying for it.
No definition on location, I just figured cross country, that's the only sewer line.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wyckoff.
Good afternoon again, board. So I think for this month's ops report, I would just like to touch on a couple of the things that we don't normally see. In the ops report, I have a tendency to focus on service line repairs, so there's going to be a little bit, a few items that are a little bit different. One of the things that we start off with, though, is just we expand a little bit on the fire hydrant flow testing that happened in La Quintana, because it's a good opportunity to discuss water quality and manganese. There are a few pretty good pictures of the before and after. Okay, so there's the NFPA manual that governs how to effectively fire flow test. Incidentally, the ISO rating for Jenny Lind appears to be going from a 5Y down to a 3Y. So this has been the flow testing in conjunction with the quality of the water system has been a huge improvement for ISO ratings for the Jenny Lind system. There's additional work that's taking place in Wallace. Wallace, I guess, is tied into the Jenny Lind system somewhat, so there's an opportunity to even further improve the ISO rating for folks in that area through the water system. So that's
great.
Yeah.
Do we have any sense of what the impact on customers? I mean, I know that'll be an indirect, you know, it's hard to pin it.
Financially, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I don't know, but the fire chief was very excited. He said this will be a significant improvement. So
We need to publicize.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's,
yeah.
John just stepped out, but let's make sure.
Yeah,
we talk
absolutely.
about that.
So just to get your eyes close up and personal on, the image on the left shows some colored water from manganese. The image on the right, you can see it clearing up. And that's a diffuser. So that's how we flow test and diffuse the water away from an area. And then here you go, the handy dandy cup shows.
Did you take a drink?
There's a true, I mean, and it's an aesthetic thing. I would,
I would drink it.
it's a palatability thing, not a potability thing. There it is.
Yeah.
So hats off to the guys that worked on that. Here's up in Ebbets Pass. So this is a flared poly connection. You can see kind of, this is an interesting one because not only do you get a better understanding of what causes a lot of these service line leaks, i.e. tree roots. And then also you get to see kind of how a manifold looks. In the image on the left, the 2 meter boxes are right next to each other. So you have the service line coming up from the water main that actually tees off and feeds both of the water meters. And the meters were removed on the image on the right to facilitate the actual repair. So great job to Joe Darby and his team up there in the pass. Here's Hillcrest Hathaway Pines. This is one of our oldest systems that we own and operate. And so this was a galvanized line. In the image on the left, you can see it springing a leak right there at the valve, and then the replacement with the poly on the right with the new perp stop. And the meter, this is kind of the image on the right has what's called a meter setter. So it's a rigid piece of copper or brass that holds the meter in place, and the image on the that's the image on the left, and then the image on the right is the replacement with poly tube. And then here's a corp install. So you can see Joe in the image on the left installing the new corp, and this gives you a better understanding, and I'm sure you guys have seen this throughout your tenure here at the district. Basically, that's a coupling for the water main. And oftentimes the threads for the corp stops blow out, and then the corp leaks, and then the corps get age, and then they leak, and they are in need of replacement. So that's a good picture of that on the image on the right. Moving on, a lot of work in West Point. So this is locating a couple of lines. So we have a treated water line and a raw water line in close proximity to each other, coming from the Middle Fork pump station and crossing near the Middle Fork pump station and coming up through what's called Acorn Way. And this just illustrates valve locating and water line locating work that Doug is doing up in West Point to improve the system overall. The images last month, I showed you that he located actually some distribution system meters that are in existence in the West Point system. So now we've found those, and we can incorporate those into a SCADA system in the future. Some other improvements to the West Point warehouse, putting up some security. So you can see the expanded metal in the image on the right that our mechanics found out in the yard, and we were able to cut to size for Doug, and Doug put a frame around the window, and we were able to install that. So he's doing a lot of really effective cleanup work. This is a great image to show you kind of what we deal with on underground service alert locating in West Point area. So you can see that not only is the water main under the fence, but it's also under the telephone pedestal.
Wow.
And going through one property to another property, and it looks kind of like it might be on a roadway with a fence. So it's really important to understand where the pinch points are out in the distribution system should we need to get in there with some equipment to make a repair, and hence the the timely request for a vac trailer for West Point, because a lot of the areas in West Point are small, tight quarters, and getting a vac on in there to bore a hole in the ground and make a repair is.
So I can't tell which one is supposed to be the one, the finished product after adding protection.
Well, so there's no, it's just what I want to get you to pay attention to is that blue line. So that blue line is the mark for the water line. And then you can see that orange flag. So that orange flag is telecom. So you can see that the blue line in the image on the right, you can see the phone pedestal, which is kind of the off-colored greenish blue thing with the blue line right below it. And then the orange flag kind of hidden in the little saplings that are trying to, cedar saplings that are trying to grow there. So that's all utility infrastructure, just basically living on top of each other.
I think that text is just carryover from the previous slide, though. It's
Sorry.
confusing.
Yeah.
It's a different.
Illustrating
Illustrating a different.
I didn't even see the text.
No, that's all right.
My bad.
Yeah.
And that incidentally is Big Trees Village in the ground and Poker Flat. So when you open up the ground, you find everything just living harmoniously together in the common trench. This is a great picture of a leak repair on a service line to just kind of give you some perspective of like, that one's pretty far down there. Sometimes these guys can be pretty tough to access. So, and really he pinpointed, if you look at that, I mean, so part of the challenge out in the system is I can hear the leak. I can see where the water's percolating.
Where's it going?
But is the leak over here? Well, it looks like he nailed it with that one.
Yeah.
Because it was right on top of. Yeah, he dug that by hand. Okay, well, there you go. Fabulous work. So here's some pictures of the second filter. You don't really get the kind of the widescreen, but you get the down in the details image of KW crews working to set. This is the intake header for the actual filter. So all those little ports that are coming off that, I think it's a 12-inch header pipe, will have collector pipes on them. And those live inside of a layer basically riprap, which on top of that you have rock, and then you have some cobble, and then you have sand, looks like beach sand. And then you have garnet sand, so garnets that have been ground to a fine sand. And then you have anthracite, about 2.5 feet, 2 feet of anthracite coal, which oftentimes is charred coconut shells, interestingly enough. And so that is the makeup for your mixed media filter. And so the work progresses in West Point.
We really got to circle back to a tour because we have so
I
much
would
going
love
on in West Point. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
lot.
we do.
Anytime from June 22nd through July 5th would be really good.
Okay.
My husband's gone.
Gotcha.
So I can do whatever I
Oh,
want.
Fred would want to be on the tour.
Yeah.
He probably would, actually.
So oftentimes, you work to improve or repair or rehab tools so that you can make use of them. So this is the Vallecito crew, kind of reflecting back on the agenda item for the paver. Replacing the fuel line on the cutoff saw so that we can do a lot of conduit trenching and cutting of concrete and asphalt. So a really good depiction of that is the image on the right. You can see the asphalt, the concrete cut around the old headwork screen there in Vallecito. And the image on the right, you can see some trenching with a Mini X, also with some cutting at the top of the screen. You can see there where that concrete was cut. So the more images of Vallecito. So the image on the left, some more cutoff saw work with locating the existing effluent line, and then the image on the right with our crews installing another valve and new piping. So one of the improvements for the installation of this grit chamber is that it improves the life of the filters in the MBR plant at Vallecito.
Mhm.
And it also improves the flexibility of where the operators can convey the raw water, the raw sewage during times of emergency, storms, what have you. So a lot of that work went into creating and installing new pathways for the water supply. And this is
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's a relatively new plant that
right.
we're working to protect.
Was it HEE?
Yeah,
Polyethylene
yes.
on your.
Well, so that's Schedule 80, I believe, on the right.
That's good.
Yeah. And then, but you're right, Michael. So there were a bunch of identified improvements throughout the years of operating the facility. Like if we can shut that valve when we get this kind of flow and send the water that way, those improvements were implemented on this project. So
Nice.
and this is all in-house, all district staff. We were even able to repair the culverts that overflowed with water during these atmospheric river events and just, traveled over the asphalt across the yard. There was a giant rock in that culvert pipe that our staff were able to cut out and rehab the culvert. We installed a new water line for sanitary purposes to the new headwork screen. So this is exhibiting some of the talents of Roger Tyndall, who's on the construction crew. So these are the concrete forms for the trash rack. I call it a trash rack. Some people call it a screening unit or a headwork screw. So and you can kind of just, the images I think speak for themselves. The image on the left pouring the concrete, basically barriers for that trash rack screw to sit in between. So the wastewater flows, it has to flow through that corkscrew, and that corkscrew has a screen on it, and it spins and conveys all of the things that are in sewer that we don't want to push. Exactly. The sharp objects, the Barbie doll arms, the what have you, up into the top of that headwork screw and then dumps them into a garbage can. And so this was all installed in-house with some help from a couple folks, metal fabricators. They did great work. And so image on the right, you can kind of see part of the yard that will be soon covered in asphalt. Fire crew cleanup. This is always great to see. Ron Rose does a great job working with the Vallecito CDF camp to schedule out the fire crews. And here they are cleaning up the encroachment from Highway 4 on down into the treatment facility. A lot of work there, trimming trees, weed eating. They do great work for us at $224 a day. You get 12 employees who just work their tails off. And this feeds into the Forest Meadows. So the image on the left is the before at the Forest Meadows Pond. The image on the right is the after. And this is the district, working to maintain a positive working relationship with the golf course and working to make sure that that facility is up to snuff. And you can kind of see these are a couple weeks old depictions of images of the pond that show that the water quality looks to be acceptable at this point in time. And the image here, it's kind of hard to make out, but there are a few mechanics, district mechanics down there working to help the fire captain, the CAL FIRE captain, direct his crew on getting some equipment that was on the side of the pond out of there. So great work with our guys. This is a little a couple images of improving what we already have. So we locate some quads that are out in the yards and we throw them on a trailer and we bring them over here to the shop and we fix them up so that we can deploy them throughout the district. And this is what our mechanics do day in and day out. Hats off to them. And then you can see a cylinder replacement on the gap backs that they did. It allows the opening door on the back end of the tank to open and close quickly. Pulling an aerator with their crane to check operation. Everything seems fine. You know, operators issue a work order that there's a weird noise or this thing's rattling. Can you guys come take a look? They come out, they grab it, pull it out, take a look, put it back. All in a day's work. Here's some images of the fire that was near the Big Trees Tank 4 site. Just to kind of show you, this is KW Emerson's equipment. The first responders did a great job ensuring that nothing other than the porta potty melted. So it's pretty darn good, I would say. And so this is an assessment that our electricians go through. You can see the tank in the image on the right at the top. The image on the left is actually the cell tower that property is leased on our district property. So it got pretty darn close. Here's the driveway in.
Did we share that picture with Cal OES and FEMA?
I can.
We should.
I will. That's a great point. The pump station on your left, you can see that is actually part of the longer term CIP, because that is actually a pump station in the image on your left.
Who called in the fire?
That is a great question. And this is one of the things that the district, we talked to Ebbets Pass Fire about, because we found out via social media. So we need to just, it's kind of a continual thing though, working to improve that communication.
Right.
I'm not sure how it was called in. It ended up being right around 4 acres.
Do you have any plans to maybe clear a little bit wider path around the tank and everything now?
I think the fire helped us with that.
Yeah, so but it does bring up that consideration of,
Yeah, what
okay,
about the drive-in? That looks kind of small, but
so these are those things where it's, okay, here's the district's postage stamp of a lot, but is there a defensible space?
Yeah.
And is there an ability to work with your neighbors to improve the defensible space? Because not only did FEMA fund the replacement of the tank, they're going to be the ones that we call if something happens that, after the fact. So that's a great point. Here's our world famous bucket truck in action.
okay.
So radio telemetry antenna being replaced at the Big Trees 1 tank site. Yes. Jared Devich does a great job. He can get that truck all over this county, and he's often seen in the bucket doing the work.
I wish I had them.
Yeah, right?
Seriously.
That's off to him.
I wish I did.
And there's a clean
How I could pay, I would.
a clean shot of that headwork screen, trash rack, screening unit, screw press, whatever you want to call it. But
Cool.
it's really cool.
Very nice, Amy.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Love the fix.
Okay, moving on to 7B.
Yeah, I can't believe I haven't learned by now after all these years of working together, not to include some pictures in my pictures are less interesting though. Here I am sitting at the computer again. So we already talked about rate study. I'm not going to get into an update on that. I do want to just make sure we continue every board meeting, whether it's GM report or an agendized item, until we're done with that process. We'll keep talking about it. We're going to push out every opportunity we get to the community about where we are in the process and the importance of that July 12th meeting. So we'll Kelly Richards and John and Kelly Gerkensmeyer, amongst others, are coordinating on the outreach tools that we're developing for that. So a lot of that work is underway right now, and we'll be seeing rolled out over the next few months, in particular the next few weeks. I had a really positive and productive meeting with Teresa Hitchcock, who is the new county CEO, new title for the county, and Marcos Munoz, who's the assistant CEO, and he's been with the county for a while now. He moved into the assistant CEO position about a year ago, and broad range of topics discussed with the two of them. Spent a couple hours with them, and it was just all good, all fantastic. I can't wait to work more closely with them, and I think we're going to be able to make a lot of progress.
I think you said the name Hitchcock. Is that part of the local Murphy's family?
No, she and no relation to Rebecca either. She relocated,
Right.
brought her family up here. She's local now and seems to be committed to providing some stability and some continuity to that office. So I think it's all positive signs for the county.
She had a long, diverse career in the Kern County, Bakersfield
Right.
area.
Mhm.
Department head.
Hopefully she gets our county in order.
I'm optimistic. We also met with Mark and I went over and met with Gabriel Elliott, the planning director, just to more of they had met briefly before at the town hall meeting in Copper, that the county had hosted a few weeks ago, but just a deeper connection between our new district engineer and the planning director, and talked about, planning projects that are on the horizon in the county and coordination with CCWD. Gabriel continues to be a really great partner for us. And then, so we're in, it may be hard to tell right now, but Jeff and I are actually in DC. We have been there for the last week and a half now. But no, we've been doing our DC meetings. Over the last couple of weeks, we had shifted from going out there to virtual, and I think it's gone really well. Mia, true to form, has got us meetings with the people that we need to be meeting with, and they've been really positive, productive meetings. I think the biggest focus again is on the Army Corps funding, and on us really trying to push the appropriation of the rest of the funding for the copper project. It's been well received, I think, but it's also been with the caveat of, this is a super competitive program. There's a lot of other requests in. So if we don't secure it through the legislative process, through Senator Feinstein's request, then it's up to how much we are able to get through the legislative process, and then what Army Corps discretion is available in the work plan process to provide any increase or not. And that's where they're saying it's really competitive. So if we can't secure it as an earmark, I think what they're doing is making sure to adjust our expectations as to how much we'll be able to secure above that. And if past is prologue, the previous 2 years, we got the $1 million appropriation in the federal budget and requested the Army Corps to increase the dollar amount in the work plan. And Congressman McClintock made calls and wrote letters on our behalf to try to secure a higher dollar amount in the work plan. And we got $1 million in the work plan each year. So we've never been able to actually increase the dollar amount through the work plan process, just because of how competitive the program is.
How much is Senator Feinstein going to be able to help you, or do you need her help?
Yeah, I mean, we deal mostly with her staff, and they've been fantastic.
No, because of her help.
I'm going to stay out of the politics of it.
Her staff is on top of it.
They're on top of it, and they're great, and they maintain, regardless of what's going on with her, they are, because of the role that she's played in water for decades now, they have a lot of influence on that. And so when her office put in the request for the $11.2 million, You know, it's with the caveat of, yeah, this is early in the legislative process, but she chairs the budget subcommittee that oversees the Army Corps' budget. So it puts us in a very good position to have her office requesting that funding for us. And her office is super responsive and all over it. So we haven't seen any drop off on that front.
Okay.
We've had, you know, obviously meetings with their offices, Army Corps offices, Office of Management and Budget, and we have still one upcoming is USDA to talk about. It's partly to thank them for the funding for the AMI project, talk about other potential projects and funding opportunities, and also to put in a good word for the loan guarantee that USDA is processing for the biomass project in West Point, and encouraging them to move that forward. We had our regular EPOC meeting last week, which went well. I think continues to be a fantastic outreach opportunity for us. We are also participating in, I think I mentioned this in previous meetings, but one of the things we talked about with the county today is the housing resource partnership that they've created as a way to bring utilities and different county departments together to encourage development in the county and identify and work on, you know, collaborate to identify obstacles to new housing development in the county. And that's a process we're actively involved in. It's a high priority for the county. They understand our limitations from a budget standpoint as a utility, but we want to be involved in those discussions and be a part of those solutions.
Did you say that you met with El Dorado County, or was that Calaveras County? They're actually proactive about.
Calaveras County.
Yeah, well, it just seems odd.
The sarcasm was even more subtle than normal there.
I could tell you the impediment right here and right now.
Yeah, no, it's Lee Kimball and Gabriel Elliott and Doug Oliver are it's a high priority for them. They've pulled this group together. Art Kevin Williams, their engineer, has participated in it, and I've participated where I can. And we're invested. We want to help them figure out ways to help developers build houses in the county.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with, speaking of the biomass project, Phoenix Energy. We just keep pulling back. I'll have to print out. I should have done it for today. As we peel back the layers between co-locating our project and their project in West Point, it just gets better and better, it seems like. And so they've really identified that as a model that they want to replicate. And the next potential site that they have in mind is, you know, somewhere along Highway 4. We did a site visit with them in Arnold at the wastewater treatment plant there, where we have property. It's, you know, there's trade-offs to every potential site. That one's right off the highway. It's in the snow in the winter, so there's some things to like about it. There's some trade-offs. There's other potential sites though that we have, but putting those plants next to water or wastewater infrastructure just makes all kinds of sense, and we should have them up and down the Sierras. So we're hoping the West Point will serve as a model for that, and then we can do, you know, one or two more in Calaveras County, and then spread the word from there. Tomorrow is a super exciting day for CCWD. It is Bring Your Kid to Work Day, and we have huge response. Staff are really excited about it. It's going to be a really fun day. Really appreciate Stacy and Becca and the Kellys and everybody that put work into organizing that event. It was really meaningful. Some of the board members were there last year. And the feedback we got from staff about the ability to share with their families what they do here was really meaningful. So we're excited to expand on it this year. So it should be a fun day. And then lastly, just the reminder, I'm out of the office the last week in June. So I will miss a board meeting, but we'll have it covered, and we'll have everything dialed in and ready to go. It'll be an easy one.
Very good. You mean we're going to maybe approve the budget without you?
Yes, you may.
Wow.
And I encourage you to.
I said maybe.
Are you
You're not going to call in remotely?
I can't, unfortunately. I will be at the bottom of the Yampa River Canyon. So I don't
Good.
have a satellite phone that will connect me, I don't think.
Still have flotation.
Yeah.
But I think by then, everything's gonna be dialed in. It should be an easy meeting, so. Be good to go.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay, we have board reports. Bertha, can we start with you?
Okay, the Arnold Independence Day Parade, then
Yeah,
you're on top of that.
we're on top of it.
We're gonna
We're
have
signed up.
presents.
We'll have a couple of, we're working on staffing still, but John has us signed up for a couple of trucks and we will be there.
Okay.
Colors on.
Can we put Bertha in the bucket?
Ooh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal idea. Bertha in the bucket.
BB,
Yes,
BB.
as with a Statue of Liberty costume, maybe. Yes,
Just
Okay,
get
let's,
better and
okay.
better.
this has got to happen now. Okay.
okay. I want to share, something I got from Forest Meadows. Well, this will be,
Oh, I hope I know what it is, and if it is what I think it is, that's fantastic. I'm glad you. I was remiss in not mentioning it.
What is it? Come on.
they're closing, they're not gonna, I don't know. This was a letter that said they're gonna close the golf course.
Oh no, that's not what I thought it was.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
They have nice, music out there now, which is really nice.
Oh, yeah.
Music and dinner.
No, but the thing it reminded me of that I should have included in my report was just the shout out. Damon already mentioned Ron coordinating the cruise and the good work that Ron does, but we actually received emails directly from the houses that are near the pond there in Forest Meadows, specifically thanking Ron Rose for the work that he does out there to be responsive to them and coordinating the crews to do the cleanup work around that pond. So just a shout out to Ron for all the good work that he does. But that's news to me. We had not received that letter yet.
Okay, well, you can have it.
Thank you.
I haven't heard either.
Pretty quiet up the hill. We're getting ready for the summer crowds. That's it for me.
Jeff?
I just have, one thing, well, two things. First of all, I really miss Scott Radaman, I'll tell you that. But also there's a report that DWR gave Stockton East $12.2 million to divert water from New Hogan for groundwater recharge.
Yeah.
Was it?
Be interesting to find out how much water, where are they gonna, where's the site?
Yeah, we will
Why aren't
bring
we
back
part-
details on it. I was aware of the grant award, but, and I know they went through a lot of work to identify because this is floodwater, right?
Yeah, it's starting with floodwater, so it's not taking out of the contract water.
Right.
So
And it was,
technical difference.
this is under the governor's executive order, and it's a legislative effort right now to codify something that would allow agencies, which we may be able to take advantage of someday, to divert floodwater for beneficial use, including recharge, which makes a lot of
It's
sense.
just something to put on the back burner, maybe just think about. Seems like at one point, Stockton East tried to file on Cosgrove Creek. It'd be interesting to find out where that is, if they're gonna be diverting floodwater, in particular, and, that's an identified flood area and the flood source. It'd be interesting to see if there's any opportunity for us.
Yeah, we'll bring back some details on that and we're looking into it, so.
And we can give you an update on their water rate issue that you're talking about. Yeah, but it seems to be just jammed in the process. I don't know.
Well, some people are asking me about this particular thing, because
Yeah,
everyone knows that, that Stockton and now the city of Stockton is also taking water out of Hogan. And,
through Stockton East, yeah.
right, so I don't know, I just kind of like to get on top of that.
Sure.
That's it.
Cindy?
It's really been quiet as far as I go for up at West Point. I missed the fire meetings. Maybe John could say something afterwards, but enjoying the weather. It's like, you know, you get the mornings are perfect and all the thunder comes in and the clouds and a little bit of rain, actually quite a bit of rain yesterday, I think it was. And it's just kind of nice. I hope it's like that all the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But were you able to go to that fire meeting? Was it a good turnout?
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Very well attended. I could only stay for about the first 30 minutes. I jumped back down here to the Calgary Utilities meeting that was that same night. Their special meeting to review rates. But CAL FIRE was there. There was lots of resources there.
Nice.
CAL FIRE was putting on their presentation when I left. And I guess there was probably 30 or 40 people there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
It was well attended.
Nice.
And we had, and if you, maybe John, if you don't mind, Derek, while we're in closed session, printing out some of those flyers that we had that with Blue Mountain Energy.
Oh, yeah.
that we-
Oh, I'd like to see
the
that,
board members, just so they can see what we've developed there.
You bet. Yeah, that's a super.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I want to just start off by saying that I'm happy to announce that today is my 21st wedding anniversary. And I'm here and you're bad mouthing me the whole time. I'm just, I should be with my wife.
Congratulations, Director Thomas. Today is my 9th wedding.
Really? Wow. Good going. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that John Osborne, very highly paid John Osborne, by the way.
The 350,
Right over those and compare my paychecks.
the $350,000.
I think we're gonna name the rate increase after.
We were invited to go to an event at Drifters Marina on Monday for lunch. I enjoyed my lunch. It was pretty good. By the Calaveras County Republican Women's Federated. And boy, oh boy, there's some fired up ladies down there. But we gave a presentation that they wanted to know about our proposed rate increase. And so we tried to do the best we could to, and I think we did a very good job of explaining that this is a part of it's like salmon going up the river. It has to be done. It has to be done in a prescribed way. And why don't you come and participate? And the room is full of them here today. But anyway, it was well received, I think. So let's go to that.
Yeah.
I always enjoy being asked to do the national anthem, and they did that again this year, and they sang along loudly with me, and what was her name? Brittany Griner was not there, so she should have been. So that is my report. We have a closed session conference with legal counsel. Anticipated litigation, significant exposure.
Very good. Bye, everybody. Thank you. See you later.